What happens when the weakest human princess becomes the only thing standing between a cursed alpha king and complete destruction? In a kingdom where humans are prey and wolves rule with iron claws, Lyra Vance was sent as a sacrifice, disposable, powerless, forgotten. But when she discovers the terrifying secret eating the king alive from within, everything changes. This is a story of brutal betrayal, forbidden power, and a bond that will shatter an entire kingdom's understanding of strength. Stay until the end to see how a girl deemed worthless becomes the force that saves a dying king and reshapes an empire. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments and smash that like button. Let's build this community together. The iron gates of Vance Keep groaned shut behind the carriage, sealing Lyra's fate with a sound like a dying breath. She didn't look back. There was nothing worth seeing, just the gray stone fortress that had been her prison for 19 years, and beyond it, the father who'd finally found a use for his greatest disappointment. Useless, he'd called her 3 days ago, when he signed the treaty. Weak bloodline, no magic, no strength, no value to this kingdom, except as a bargaining chip. The words still burned. Not because they were cruel, Lyra had heard worse from courtiers who whispered just loud enough for her to hear, but because they were true. In a kingdom where power meant everything, where her siblings could shift into wolves by their 12th year, where even servants demonstrated more physical prowess than she ever would, Lyra Vance was an anomaly. A human locked in a body that refused to transform, refused to strengthen, refused to be anything but ordinary. And now she was being sent north, to the Draven territories, where humans weren't citizens. They were food. The carriage lurched over rough terrain, and Lyra gripped the wooden seat to steady herself. Across from her sat Captain Thorn, the only guard her father had bothered to send as escort. His weathered face showed no emotion, but she'd caught him checking his silver daggers 3 times since they left. Weapons meant for wolves, not protection. "How long?" Lyra asked, breaking the heavy silence. Thorn's gray eyes flicked to her, calculating. 2 days to the border. 1 more to Ravenscar Citadel. He paused. If we're lucky. And if we're not? Then the Draven scouts find us first, and you arrive as damaged goods. His tone was matter-of-fact, as if discussing weather. The Alpha King doesn't accept broken offerings. Your father's treaty would collapse before you took your first breath in that fortress. Lyra's stomach twisted. She'd heard the stories every child in the southern kingdoms had. Kyle Draven, the Alpha King of the North, who'd united the wolf clans through sheer brutality, who'd torn through the Blood Moon Rebellion with his bare hands, leaving fields soaked red, who'd killed his own uncle for challenging his claim to the throne, then mounted the man's head on the citadel gates as a warning, a monster in human skin, and she was being delivered to his bed like a lamb to slaughter. Why did he agree? Lyra whispered, more to herself than Thorn. What could he possibly want with a human bride? Thorn's laugh was bitter. Want? Child, Kael Draven doesn't want anything from you. This arrangement benefits your father. The Draven territories cease their expansion south, and Vance Keep gains a powerful ally. You? He shook his head. You're a gesture, a symbol, proof that even humans can be offered to the wolves when politics demand it. A sacrifice. Precisely. The carriage hit another rut, and through the small window, Lyra watched the landscape transform. The gentle hills of her homeland gave way to harsh, rocky terrain dotted with twisted pines. The air grew colder with each passing hour, carrying scents of ice and wild things. Even the sky seemed darker here, as if the sun itself feared to shine too brightly over wolf territory. That night, they camped in a clearing that Thorn selected with military precision. Open sight lines, defensible position, near running water. He built a fire but kept it small, barely enough to warm the hardtack and dried meat that passed for dinner. Don't wander, he warned, settling against a boulder with his daggers across his lap. The border patrol runs these woods. They catch your scent, they'll investigate. Best case, they escort us the rest of the way. Worst case, I become a snack before the wedding, Lyra finished dryly. Thorn's mouth twitched, the closest thing to a smile she'd seen from him. You've got steel in you somewhere, princess. Might serve you well in the Citadel, though I'd advise keeping it hidden. Alpha King doesn't appreciate defiance from humans. Lyra pulled her thin cloak tighter against the wind. What does he appreciate? Obedience, silence, submission. Thorn's eyes reflected the firelight, cold and knowing. And if the rumors are true, absolute compliance during the full moon. The transformation makes them aggressive, territorial. You'll be expected to endure whatever form that aggression takes. Heat flooded Lyra's cheeks, but she forced her voice steady. Is that when it happens? The mating bond? Bond? Thorn snorted. This isn't a fairy tale, child. There's no magical connection, no destined souls. You're a political arrangement. He'll mark you to seal the treaty, probably during the next full moon, 3 weeks hence, and after that, your property. The Alpha King's human pet. He leaned forward, face suddenly serious. Listen carefully. You will be alone in that citadel, surrounded by creatures that view you as inferior at best, prey at worst. The only thing keeping you alive is your value as a treaty seal. If you anger him, if you embarrass him, if you give him any reason to dissolve this arrangement, my father's kingdom loses its protection, Lyra finished, and I lose my life. Exactly. They sat in silence after that, the fire crackling while night sounds emerged from the forest, things that howled and hunted in the darkness. Lyra tried to sleep but managed only fitful dozing, startled awake by every snapping branch, every distant cry. When dawn finally broke, they resumed their journey with renewed urgency. Thorn kept his hand on his dagger, eyes constantly scanning the tree line. The terrain grew more treacherous, steep inclines, narrow passes, places where the carriage barely fit between cliff walls that seemed to lean in, crushing. It was mid-afternoon on the second day when Lyra felt it, a prickling awareness, like being watched by unseen eyes. The horses sensed it too, growing skittish, ears flattening. Thorn, I know. His voice was tight. We're being tracked, have been for the last hour. Do we run? On this terrain? We'd break an axle before we made a mile. He exhaled slowly. We continue. Let them come. With luck, they'll recognize you're the Alpha King's promised bride and simply escort us. And without luck? Thorn didn't answer, but his grip on the dagger turned his knuckles white. The attack came without warning, a massive gray wolf launching from the rocks above, landing directly in front of the horses. They reared in terror, nearly overturning the carriage before Thorn grabbed the reins with brutal efficiency. 3 more wolves emerged from the shadows, circling, their movements coordinated and intelligent. Border Patrol. Not mindless beasts, but shapeshifters in wolf form. The largest one, scarred across its muzzle, easily the size of a draft horse, fixed golden eyes on Lyra. It inhaled deeply, scenting her, then its lips pulled back to reveal teeth designed for ripping flesh. State your business, a voice commanded. Lyra jerked her gaze to the source. A woman stood at the tree line, arms crossed, wearing leather armor marked with the Draven crest, a wolf's head wreathed in thorns. Her hair was ice blonde, her eyes the same predatory gold as the wolves surrounding them. Captain Thorn of Vance Keep, Thorn called, keeping his hands visible and away from weapons. Escorting Princess Lyra Vance to Ravenscar Citadel, as agreed in the treaty between King Marcus Vance and Alpha King Kael Draven. The woman's gaze cut to Lyra with visible disdain. This is the offering? She circled the carriage slowly, examining Lyra like livestock at market. So small, so fragile. The Alpha King agreed to this. The treaty was signed, Thorn replied evenly. We're expected. The woman tapped her fingers against her arm, considering. Finally, she nodded sharply. You'll proceed under escort. My patrol will ensure you reach the Citadel intact, though why we're wasting resources protecting human flesh is beyond my understanding. Commander Astrid, one of her soldiers jogged over, still in human form. Should we verify with the Citadel? This seems... I said we escort them. Astrid cut him off, her tone brooking no argument. The Alpha King's orders were clear. Any humans approaching under treaty terms are to be delivered safely. Her smile turned sharp. What happens after delivery isn't our concern. They moved out, the wolves taking formation around the carriage, 2 ahead, 2 behind, more ranging through the forest on either side. Astrid rode a massive black stallion alongside, her posture radiating contempt. Tell me, princess, she called conversationally, though her eyes never stopped scanning the terrain. Can you even shift? Or are you pure human? I'm human, Lyra replied, lifting her chin despite the burning shame. I cannot transform. Cannot or have not? Cannot. I've tried. My entire life I've tried. Astrid laughed, a cold, cutting sound. Then you're not just weak. You're defective. She leaned closer, voice dropping to a cruel whisper. In the Draven territories, we call the defective ones. Put them down before they can weaken the pack. The only reason you're still breathing is political necessity. Remember that when you're lying beneath the Alpha King, wondering why he can barely stand to touch you. Lyra's hands clenched in her lap, nails biting into palms. Don't react. Don't give them the satisfaction. But Astrid wasn't finished. You know what the Citadel calls you? The court's already buzzing with gossip. They're calling you the offering, not a bride, not a queen, just a thing to be used and discarded when your political value expires. She straightened in her saddle. I give you 3 months before the Alpha King tires of this farce and finds a reason to dissolve the treaty. And when that happens, Commander, Thorn's voice was hard. Your orders were to escort, not torment. Astrid's eyes flashed dangerously, but she backed off, spurring her horse ahead. The wolves maintained their formation in silence, though Lyra could feel their hostility like heat radiating from flames. They traveled for another full day, the landscape growing increasingly harsh and beautiful in its severity. Massive pines gave way to snow-capped peaks. Rivers ran swift and cold, their water so clear Lyra could see smooth stones 10 feet down. And everywhere evidence of wolf territories, territorial markers, hunting grounds, the occasional picked clean carcass of something that had wandered too far from safety. This was their world, ancient, brutal, governed by strength and survival. And Lyra was an intruder. It was late afternoon when Ravenscar Citadel finally came into view, and Lyra's breath caught in her throat. The fortress wasn't built. It was carved directly into the mountainside, a massive structure of black stone and iron that seemed to emerge organically from the rock itself. Towers rose like jagged teeth against the darkening sky. Walls thick enough to withstand siege engines stretched for what looked like miles. And at the highest point, a great hall with windows that blazed with firelight, visible for leagues in every direction. A declaration of power, a warning to enemies, home to the Alpha King. As they approached the main gates, Lyra noticed people, dozens of them, shapeshifters in human form, stopping their work to stare. Blacksmiths lowered their hammers. Market vendors abandoned their stalls. Even children fell silent, watching the carriage pass with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Fresh meat, someone muttered, just loud enough to carry. Look how pale she is. Probably die before the wedding night. The humans have no business in the Citadel. This is an insult to our traditions. Astrid rode ahead, calling out commands that cleared a path through the gathering crowd. The gates opened with a mechanical precision that spoke of constant maintenance, revealing a courtyard large enough to hold 1,000 soldiers. Training grounds to the left, where warriors sparred with savage intensity. Stables to the right, housing horses that looked like they could run forever. And ahead, a grand staircase leading to the Citadel's main entrance. The carriage stopped. End of the line, Princess, Astrid announced, dismounting with fluid grace. Captain Thorn, your services are no longer required. You'll be provided food and rest before your return journey begins at dawn. Thorn climbed down slowly, his weathered face showing something that might have been regret. Princess Lyra. I'll manage, Lyra interrupted, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. She stepped out of the carriage on trembling legs, forcing them to lock and hold her weight. The crowd had grown. Hundreds of eyes tracked her every movement, measuring, judging, finding her wanting. This way. Astrid strode toward the staircase without checking if Lyra followed. The Alpha King will receive you in the Great Hall. Do try not to faint. It reflects poorly on your father's bloodline. Lyra walked, each step deliberate and controlled despite the terror clawing at her chest. The staircase seemed endless, the doors at the top massive and reinforced with iron bands. Guards flanked the entrance, both in human form, both armed with weapons designed to kill their own kind if necessary. The doors swung open. The great hall stretched before her like a cathedral of power, vaulted ceilings lost in shadow, pillars carved with scenes of hunts and battles, tapestries depicting wolf packs bringing down prey 3 times their size. and at the far end, raised on a dais of black stone, a throne carved from a single piece of obsidian. Sitting upon it was a man who made every instinct in Lyra's body scream danger. Kyle Draven. He was larger than she'd imagined, not just tall, but built with the kind of muscle that came from actual combat, not training yards. Dark hair fell to his shoulders, framing a face that was beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful, sharp, cold, designed to cut. His eyes were amber with flecks of gold, wolf eyes even in human form, and they tracked her approach with the focus of a predator calculating whether prey was worth the effort of pursuit. He wore black, simple clothing that somehow emphasized his authority more than any crown. One hand rested on the throne's arm, fingers tapping a slow rhythm. The other held a goblet of something dark red, wine or blood. Lyra couldn't tell from this distance. The court surrounded him, dozens of nobles in fine clothes, advisors whispering behind hands, warriors standing at attention, all of them watching her stumble into their world like a lamb into a wolf den. Astrid strode ahead, dropping to one knee before the throne. Alpha King, I present Lyra Vance, as agreed in the Southern Treaty. Kale's eyes never left Lyra. He didn't speak, didn't acknowledge Astrid, just studied the human girl trembling at the base of his dais with an expression that gave nothing away. The silence stretched, growing heavier with each passing second. Lyra's knees began to shake, but she locked them, refusing to collapse. Not here, not in front of him. Finally, Kyle moved. He set down the goblet with deliberate care, then rose from the throne in a single fluid motion that was pure predator grace. He descended the dais steps slowly, each footfall echoing in the vast chamber. He stopped 3 feet away. Up close, he was even more overwhelming, taller, broader, radiating heat and power that made the air itself seem charged. His scent hit her like a physical force, pine, smoke, and something wild that had no name in human language. "Look at me," he commanded. It wasn't a request. Lyra forced her eyes upward, meeting that amber gaze head-on despite every nerve screaming at her to submit, to lower her eyes, to acknowledge his dominance. His expression shifted minutely. Surprise, perhaps. Or calculation. "So small," he murmured, echoing Astrid's earlier assessment. He circled her slowly, examining every angle. Fragile. Breakable. He stopped in front of her again. "Your father sent me this? A human who cannot even shift?" "I am aware of my limitations," Lyra managed, hating how small her voice sounded in this enormous space. "Are you?" Kale's head tilted slightly. "Then you understand your purpose here has nothing to do with strength or power or any quality that might earn respect in this court." "I understand I'm a political tool," Lyra replied, finding courage somewhere in her terror. "A symbol of alliance between your territory and my father's kingdom." Something flickered in Kyle's eyes. Amusement, maybe. "At least you're not stupid." He turned away, ascending the dais again. "Astrid, see her to the east wing. Assign servants. Provide appropriate clothing." He settled back onto the throne. "The formal binding will occur during the next full moon, as tradition demands. Until then, she is to be treated as a guest under my protection." "Protection?" Someone in the crowd scoffed. "From what?" "She's already the safest human in existence. No wolf would waste energy killing something so worthless." Laughter rippled through the court, cruel and cutting. Kale raised one hand and the laughter died instantly. "If anyone touches her," his voice dropped to something barely above a whisper, somehow more terrifying than any shout, "I will personally remove their throat. She is mine by treaty right. Mine to protect or destroy as I see fit. Is that understood?" Silence. Absolute and complete. "Good." Kale's fingers resumed their tapping rhythm on the throne. Dismissed. Astrid grabbed Lyra's arm with bruising force, dragging her from the great hall before she could process what had just happened. They moved through corridors of stone and shadow, passing servants who pressed themselves against walls to avoid contact, guards who watched with eyes that promised violence if she stepped wrong. Finally, Astrid shoved open a heavy door and thrust Lyra inside. "Your quarters. Don't leave without escort. Don't speak to the other residents without permission. And for your own sake, human," she leaned close, voice venomous, "stay out of the Alpha King's way. Whatever protection he claims to offer is temporary. One mistake, one embarrassment, and you'll discover exactly how quickly political necessity can be discarded. The door slammed shut, leaving Lyra alone in a chamber that was simultaneously luxurious and prison-like. Rich furs covered the bed, but the windows were narrow slits designed for defense, not view. A fire burned in the hearth, but the warmth couldn't touch the cold terror settling into her bones. She was here, actually here, in the heart of wolf territory, bound to a king who looked at her like an inconvenient puzzle. Lyra sank onto the bed, finally allowing the trembling to take over. She'd survived the journey, survived her first encounter with Kyle Draven. But surviving wasn't the same as living, and 3 weeks stretched before her like an eternity. 3 weeks before the full moon, before the binding, before whatever came after. A soft knock interrupted her spiral. The door opened to reveal a young woman in servant's clothing, carrying a tray of food. She kept her eyes down, movements nervous. "The Alpha King ordered food sent up," she murmured, setting the tray on a small table. "There's also water for washing, and—" She hesitated. "I'm to help you dress for dinner if you're to attend." "Dinner?" Lyra blinked. "I thought I was dismissed." "The formal court dinner is in 2 hours. You're, expected to attend." The servant, barely older than Lyra herself, finally met her eyes, and there was something like pity in them. "I'm Maya. I'll be assigned to your service during your stay." "Thank you, Maya." Lyra tried to smile, though it felt like a grimace. "Can I ask you something?" Maya tensed. "Perhaps." The Alpha King. Is he always so— She searched for words that wouldn't get her killed. "Controlled?" Maya's expression shuddered. "I serve. I don't observe." But then, in a voice barely audible, "If you value your life, don't try to understand him. Just obey." She left quickly, as if afraid of saying more. Lyra picked at the food, roasted meat, root vegetables, bread still warm from ovens. But her appetite had vanished. Through the narrow window she could see the courtyard below, watch warriors training even as night fell. Their movements were brutal poetry, every strike calculated to kill. This was her world now, a place where strength meant everything, where humans were tolerated at best, where the king himself radiated danger like heat from flames. And in 3 weeks, she would be bound to him for life, unless she found a way to survive that long. As darkness settled over Ravenscar Citadel, Lyra made herself a promise. She would not break, not visibly. Whatever happened, whoever mocked or threatened or hurt her, she would endure. Because the alternative, giving them the satisfaction of seeing her crumble, was worse than any physical pain they could inflict. She was Lyra Vance, the unwanted princess, the failed daughter, the human sacrifice. But she was still alive, and as long as breath remained in her body, she would fight to stay that way. Even if the enemy was an entire kingdom of wolves, even if the greatest danger wore a crown and called her his. The formal dinner was a masterclass in humiliation disguised as hospitality. Lyra sat at the far end of the banquet table, positioned precisely where everyone could see her, but no one had to acknowledge her directly. The great hall had been transformed. Torches blazing in iron sconces, long tables laden with enough food to feed an army. Nobles dressed in finery that somehow managed to look both elegant and predatory. And at the head table, elevated above everyone else, Kyle Draven presided over his court like a king from ancient nightmares. He hadn't looked at her once since she'd entered. Not when Maya had dressed her in a gown of deep crimson, wolf colors, Maya had whispered nervously. Not when she'd descended the stairs with trembling legs. Not when the entire hall had fallen silent at her appearance, dozens of golden eyes tracking her like prey stumbling into a hunting ground. "Is that really her?" a woman near Lyra's end of the table stage whispered. "The Alpha King's human bride?" "Bride is generous," her companion replied with a laugh that cut like glass. "More like a tribute, a living apology from the weak southern kingdoms." "I heard she can't even shift." Imagine, a creature so defective it's trapped in one form forever. How revolting. At least livestock serves a purpose. Lyra kept her eyes on her plate, mechanically cutting meat she couldn't taste. Don't react. Don't give them satisfaction. The mantra had become her lifeline over the past 2 hours, the only thing keeping her from fleeing this nightmare. A servant appeared at her elbow, refilling her wine goblet. Lyra murmured thanks, but the young man recoiled as if she'd struck him, hurrying away without a word. Even the servants feared contamination from associating with her. "Tell me, human." A nobleman 2 seats down leaned forward, his smile showing too many teeth. "Do you bleed red like us, or is your blood as pale and weak as the rest of you?" Several people laughed. Lyra's fingers tightened on her knife. "Lord Corvin," another voice interjected, smooth and cold. "Perhaps you'd prefer to direct your curiosity elsewhere." The Alpha King made his position quite clear regarding the treaty bride. Lyra glanced up to find a tall man with silver-streaked hair watching her with calculating eyes. Unlike the others, his expression held no open contempt, just assessment, as if she were a puzzle he intended to solve. "Counselor Theron speaks wisdom," Lord Corvin replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. "After all, we wouldn't want to damage the Alpha King's property before he's had opportunity to use it himself." More laughter, darker this time. Lyra felt heat flood her face, but forced herself to remain still, to keep breathing, to survive this moment and the next, and the one after that. The doors at the far end of the hall suddenly crashed open. The laughter died instantly as every head turned toward the entrance. Kael stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 of his personal guards. Even from this distance, Lyra could see something was wrong. His posture was rigid, almost brittle, and one hand gripped the doorframe with enough force that she heard wood creak. "Alpha King," Counselor Theron rose quickly. "We didn't expect you to—" "Sit." The single word carried absolute authority. Theron sank back into his chair, as if pulled by invisible strings. Kael moved into the hall with steps that were just slightly too controlled, like a man walking on broken glass. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the evening chill. His jaw was clenched so tight, Lyra could see muscles jumping beneath skin. Something was very, very wrong. He made it halfway to the head table before stopping abruptly, breathing hard. His guards moved closer, concerned, but Kael waved them back with a sharp gesture that made them retreat immediately. "The Alpha King honors us with his presence," Counselor Theron announced, though his voice carried uncertainty. "Shall we?" "I'm not staying." Kael's voice was rough, strained. "I came only to ensure our guest," his amber eyes found Lyra across the crowded hall, "is being treated with appropriate respect." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Nobles who'd been mocking her moments ago suddenly found their plates fascinating. "Of course, my king," Theron replied smoothly. "The treaty bride has been welcomed as you commanded." "Good." Kael swayed slightly, catching himself against a pillar. The movement was so subtle most wouldn't have noticed, but Lyra saw it, saw the way his knuckles went white with effort, saw the flicker of something that looked like agony cross his features before his iron control reasserted itself. He was in pain, terrible pain, barely contained beneath that mask of authority. "My king, are you—" One of the guards stepped forward. "I'm fine." The words came out as a snarl. "Return to your posts, all of you. This meal is concluded." "But we've barely—" Lord Corvin began. Kael's head snapped toward him, eyes blazing with something that transcended anger. "I said, concluded." The hall emptied with remarkable speed, nobles practically fleeing toward the exits. Within minutes, only a handful of people remained. Counselor Theron, a few guards, and Lyra, who'd frozen in her seat, uncertain whether she was included in the dismissal. Kael noticed her stillness. "You as well, human. Return to your quarters." Lyra stood quickly, but something made her pause. Perhaps it was the way he was leaning against that pillar, supporting more weight than should be necessary. Perhaps it was the fine tremor in his hands that he couldn't quite suppress. Or perhaps it was simply that, for the first time since arriving, she'd seen something other than cold authority in his expression. She'd seen suffering. "Are you—" The question escaped before wisdom could stop it. "Leave." No anger this time, just exhaustion. "Now." Lyra fled, but she didn't go far. Something pulled her back, some instinct she couldn't name. She hid in an alcove just outside the great hall, pressed against cold stone, listening. For several minutes, silence, then, "Theron, get the physician." "My king, if you'd simply allow us to—" "No." Kael's breathing had become labored. "No one can know, especially not the southern kingdoms. If word reaches Vance that I'm—" A sharp intake of breath, pain breaking through. Just get the physician. The private chambers. Discreetly. Footsteps receded. Lyra risked a glance around the corner and immediately wished she hadn't. Kael had collapsed against the pillar, both hands braced as if holding himself upright, took every ounce of strength he possessed. His face was contorted in agony, veins standing out stark against pale skin. Sweat soaked his shirt despite the cold, and he was shaking, violent tremors that looked like they might tear him apart from within. Then he moved, and Lyra saw why he'd dismissed everyone. He couldn't walk. Not properly. Each step was carefully controlled torture, every movement calculated to hide the fact that something was destroying him from the inside out. He made it 3 steps toward the private exit before his leg gave out entirely. He caught himself on a table, breathing in harsh gasps. "Damn it," he whispered, and the raw vulnerability in those 2 words shook Lyra more than any display of power could have. She should leave, should return to her quarters and forget what she'd witnessed. This was none of her business, none of her concern. He'd made it clear she was nothing but a political tool, a living treaty seal. But that sound, that barely suppressed gasp of agony, echoed in her chest like a struck bell. Before rational thought could intervene, Lyra stepped from the alcove. Kael's head snapped up, wolf-fast despite his condition. "I told you to leave. You're hurt." The words came out steadier than she felt. "I'm fine." He straightened with visible effort, and Lyra saw the cost written across every line of his body. "Return to your quarters before I have you escorted. You can barely stand. That's not your concern, human." "Maybe not." Lyra took a careful step closer. "But I'm here anyway." His eyes narrowed, calculating. "Why? Planning to run back to your father with tales of the weakened Alpha King, hoping to dissolve the treaty before the binding?" The accusation stung, but Lyra held her ground. "If I wanted to betray you, I wouldn't be standing here offering help." "Help?" A bitter laugh escaped him. "What help could you possibly provide? You're human, weak, powerless." "Yes," Lyra agreed simply. "I am all those things. But I'm also the only person in this entire citadel who isn't terrified of showing you even a moment of kindness." She took another step. "Let me help you to your chambers, before someone else sees." Kael stared at her for a long moment, amber eyes searching for deception, for ulterior motive. Whatever he found must have satisfied him because he finally nodded, just barely. "If you speak of this to anyone, I won't." Lyra moved to his side, close enough to offer support without actually touching him. "Where are your chambers?" "East wing, 3rd floor, the guarded corridor." Each word came out clipped, controlled. "Can you manage stairs?" "Can you?" The question escaped before Lyra could stop it. Kael's mouth twitched. Amusement or pain, impossible to tell. "Fair point." He pushed away from the table and Lyra instinctively reached out to steady him. The moment her hand touched his arm, several things happened simultaneously. Kael's eyes went wide with shock. His entire body went rigid, and Lyra felt something flow out of her and into him, a warmth, a pull, as if some invisible force was draining from her fingertips directly into his skin. And his pain, she could feel it. Not just sense it, but actually experience it. A burning agony that radiated through nerve and bone, like molten metal. It wasn't natural pain, wasn't injury or illness. This was something else. Something dark and wrong and utterly relentless. A curse. The word appeared in her mind, unbidden but certain. "What?" Kael's voice was hoarse. "What are you doing?" "I don't know." Lyra's own voice shook. The pain was overwhelming, threatening to pull her under, but where her hand touched his arm, she felt his agony. Lessening. Not disappearing, but dampening, as if she was absorbing it somehow, taking the edge off enough for him to function. Kael grabbed her wrist, pulling her hand away. The pain snapped back into him like a taut rope released, and he gasped, nearly doubling over. "Don't!" he gritted out. "Don't do that again." But it helped. I could feel it helping. "I don't need your help." He released her wrist as if it burned him, and I certainly don't need whatever that was. "That was the only reason you made it this far without collapsing," Lyra shot back, surprising herself with her boldness. "You're welcome, by the way." They stared at each other, both breathing hard. Finally, Kael made a visible decision. "If you're going to insist on this foolishness, then do it properly." He held out his arm. But if you tell anyone, about what you just felt, I will end the treaty myself and send your head back to your father in a box. Understood? Lyra placed her hand on his arm again, and that same warmth flowed out of her. The pain crashed into her awareness like a wave, but she gritted her teeth and held on. Understood. They moved through the corridors like two people learning a complicated dance, Kyle setting the pace, Lyra matching his steps while channeling away enough pain to keep him upright. Several times they had to stop, press against walls, wait for patrols to pass. Each time, Lyra felt the curse writhing inside him like something alive, something that fed on his strength and gave nothing but suffering in return. "How long?" she whispered during one such pause. "How long have you been dealing with this?" 5 years. The admission came grudgingly. Since I killed my uncle and took the throne. He cursed you? With his dying breath. Kale's jaw clenched. A blood curse. Unbreakable. Every moment of every day it burns through me. Some days are better than others. Today, he didn't finish, didn't need to. Why not tell your court? Your advisors? Surely there are healers, magic users who could... No one can know. The words carried absolute finality. The moment this court learns their Alpha King is compromised, they'll turn on me like sharks scenting blood. My enemies would unite. Challengers would emerge. The territories would fracture into civil war within a week. He looked at her directly. I've held this throne through strength and fear. Show weakness, even once, and everything I've built collapses. They reached his chambers finally, a massive suite guarded by 2 warriors who looked questionable when they saw Lyra, but didn't dare comment. Kyle dismissed them with a gesture, then led Lyra inside. The private chambers were surprisingly sparse. A large bed, functional furniture, weapons mounted on walls. No decorations, no personal items, nothing that spoke of the man rather than the king. A fire burned in the hearth, and through an open door, Lyra glimpsed what looked like a private bathing chamber. Kale made it to a chair before his legs gave out completely. He sank into it, head falling back, breathing like he'd run for miles. Lyra kept her hand on his arm, feeling the curse pulse and writhe beneath his skin. "Tell me what it feels like," she said softly. "The curse." "Why?" His eyes remained closed. "Because I'm feeling echoes of it. Maybe if I understand it better, I can help more effectively." A long pause, then, "It's like burning from the inside out. Like every nerve is on fire. Every bone is being slowly crushed. It never stops, never fades. Just endless, relentless agony." His hands clenched the chair arms. "The worst part isn't the physical pain, it's the mental toll. 5 years of constant torture. Every waking moment, trying to rule a kingdom while pretending nothing's wrong. Trying to make decisions while your mind is screaming for relief that never comes." "I'm so sorry." The words felt inadequate, but Lyra meant them with every fiber of her being. Kale's eyes opened, fixing on her with an intensity that stole her breath. "Why are you doing this? Truly? What do you gain from helping me?" "Nothing," Lyra admitted. "Absolutely nothing. You've made it clear I'm just a political tool. Tomorrow, you'll probably pretend this never happened. But right now, in this moment, you're suffering, and I can help. That's enough." Something shifted in his expression, surprise, maybe, or recognition. "You're either incredibly compassionate or incredibly stupid. Probably both." Lyra managed a weak smile despite the pain thrumming through her from their connection. "My father would certainly agree with the stupid part." "Your father is a fool to have discarded you." The words were matter-of-fact, no flattery, just assessment. "You have a gift. I've never felt anything like it. How does it work?" "I don't know. I didn't even know I could do it until I touched you." Lyra concentrated on the flow between them. "It's like I'm absorbing your pain somehow, taking it into myself. It doesn't disappear, but it's distributed differently, shared. You're hurting yourself to help me. It's bearable. A lie, but a kind one. The curse pain was actually excruciating, but compared to what Kyle must be experiencing every moment of every day, it was manageable." They sat in silence for several minutes, Lyra channeling pain, while Kyle slowly relaxed into something approaching normalcy. Color returned to his face. His breathing steadied. The fine tremor that had been constant since she'd first touched him gradually faded. "Better?" she asked eventually. "Yes." He studied her face. "You're pale." Shaking. "I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar." Kale gently removed her hand from his arm. The pain slammed back into him immediately, but he bore it with the practiced stoicism of someone who'd lived with agony for years. "You've done enough, more than enough. I could stay, help you through the night." "No." Firm, but not unkind. This conversation never happened. Tomorrow, we return to our roles, Alpha King and Treaty Bride. Nothing more. Lyra stood, legs unsteady. "And if I want to help again?" "You won't?" Kael rose as well, moving to a cabinet and withdrawing a small vial of dark liquid. He drank it in one swallow, grimacing. "Physician's concoction dulls the worst of it for a few hours. Between that and what you just did, I might actually sleep tonight." He walked her to the door, and for just a moment his hand touched her shoulder, a brief contact but deliberate. "Thank you, Lyra Vance. Despite my better judgment, despite every political calculation that says I should keep you at arm's length. Thank you." Then the door closed, and Lyra was alone in the corridor, trembling from pain and emotion and the surreal nature of what had just occurred. She'd touched the untouchable Alpha King, felt his secret suffering, been thanked by a man who supposedly viewed her as nothing but a political tool, and she knew, with absolute certainty, that she would help him again. Consequences be damned. The next 3 weeks became an exercise in careful deception. During the day, Lyra played her role perfectly, the quiet, submissive treaty bride who attended court functions without speaking, endured mockery without response, existed as living decoration and nothing more. But at night, when the citadel slept and shadows provided cover, she would slip through corridors to Kael's chambers. It started the second night, when she found him collapsed in his private study, alone and gasping with pain that even the physician's potions couldn't touch. She'd simply walked to him, placed her hands on his temples, and absorbed until the curse dulled enough for him to breathe. After that, it became routine. Unspoken, never acknowledged during daylight hours, but as necessary as breathing. Lyra learned the rhythms of his suffering, how the curse intensified during council meetings, feeding on his stress, how full moons made it exponentially worse, as if his wolf nature itself was being targeted, how certain weather patterns, storms especially, seemed to agitate whatever dark magic powered the curse. And Kael, slowly, reluctantly, began to trust her. "Tell me about your family," he said one night, while Lyra sat beside his chair, hands resting on his shoulders, channeling pain. "There's not much to tell. Father, 3 siblings who all shifted perfectly. I'm the disappointment." She kept her voice light, but old wounds never fully healed. "What about yours?" "Dead, all of them." No emotion, just fact. "My uncle made sure of that when he tried to seize the throne. Killed my parents, my 2 brothers, even the children. I was the only one who survived long enough to fight back." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It made me strong. Made me what I needed to be to hold this throne." He paused. "Though sometimes I wonder what I might have been if I'd been allowed to simply be myself. Not a king, not a symbol, just Kael. You could still be that person. In private, with people you trust." "I don't trust anyone." He glanced back at her. "Except apparently you. Which is either the curse affecting my judgment or the first sign that I'm going mad from the pain, or I'm genuinely trustworthy." "Impossible. Everyone has an agenda. Mine is very simple. Help you hurt less. That's it. No schemes, no political maneuvering." Kael was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Why are you so different from everyone else in this cursed citadel?" "Because I have nothing to lose," Lyra replied honestly. "I was already worthless before I came here. Being kind to you doesn't lower my status. There's nowhere lower to go. So I might as well do something good with my worthless existence." "You're not worthless." The words were sharp, almost angry. "Your gift, this ability to ease suffering, is rarer and more valuable than any ability to shift or fight. Most of my court would kill for power. You use yours to heal. That's not worthless, that's extraordinary." Lyra's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. "Thank you." Don't thank me for stating facts. But despite his gruff tone, something had shifted between them. A understanding, perhaps, or the beginning of something that might eventually become friendship if they survived long enough. The court, meanwhile, grew increasingly hostile. The human spends an unusual amount of time near the Alpha King's chambers, Counselor Theron mentioned casually during a court gathering. One might wonder what services she provides in the dark hours. Laughter, sharp and cruel. Lyra kept her expression neutral, but inside fear coiled tight. If they discovered the truth, if anyone learned about Kael's curse, everything would collapse. Perhaps she's learning her place, Lord Corvin suggested. On her knees, where humans belong. Or perhaps, Astrid leaned forward, eyes gleaming, she's discovered the only value she possesses. After all, what else can a human offer an Alpha King except entertainment? The implications were clear and vulgar and designed to humiliate. Lyra's hands clenched beneath the table, nails biting into palms. Enough! Kael's voice cut through the mockery like a blade through silk. He sat at the head of the council table, posture relaxed, but his eyes promised violence. The treaty bride's activities are my concern, not yours, unless someone wishes to question my judgment. Silence. Absolute and terrified. No, my king, Theron replied smoothly. Of course not. Good. Then perhaps we can return to actual matters of importance rather than court gossip. But the damage was done. Lyra could feel the speculation, the suspicion. They were watching her now, tracking her movements, looking for weakness to exploit. It came to a head on the night before the full moon. Lyra was making her way to Kael's chambers through the servant corridors, a route she'd learned provided better concealment, when a hand shot out from the shadows, grabbing her arm and yanking her into a storage alcove. Astrid pressed her against the cold stone wall, one hand at Lyra's throat. I knew it. I knew you were up to something. I don't know what you... Don't lie to me, human. Astrid's grip tightened just enough to make breathing difficult. I've been watching. Every night, you disappear. Every morning, the Alpha King seems slightly less volatile. What are you doing in his chambers? Nothing that concerns you. Everything concerning the Alpha King concerns me. I'm his second, his most trusted commander. Whatever you're scheming, I'm not scheming anything. Lyra met Astrid's golden eyes directly, refusing to show fear despite the hand at her throat. I'm helping him, that's all. Helping? Astrid's laugh was ugly. You're a human. You can't even shift. What help could you possibly... She stopped abruptly, eyes widening. Unless you've discovered something, some weakness, some secret you're planning to use against him. I would never... wouldn't you? Your father sent you here as a spy, didn't he? To find vulnerabilities, report back, give the Southern Kingdoms leverage. Her grip became painful. I should kill you right now. End this threat before you can betray him. Then do it. Lyra's voice came out strangled but defiant. Kill me, but know that you'll be harming the one person in this entire citadel who actually cares whether he suffers. Astrid's eyes narrowed. What do you mean, suffers? Lyra realized her mistake too late. The secret was out, dancing on the edge of revelation. Tell me. Astrid shook her slightly. What suffering? What do you know? Nothing. I misspoke. You're lying. I can smell the fear on you. Astrid leaned closer, voice dropping to something deadly. Tell me what you know about the Alpha King, or I will make your remaining days in this citadel a living hell. And if I tell you, you'll use it against him, against the king you claim to serve so loyally. That gave Astrid pause. Her hand loosened fractionally. I serve him with my life. Everything I do is to protect him, protect this kingdom. If there's a threat, the only threat is people finding out. The words burst from Lyra in desperate frustration. He's dealing with something he doesn't want known, something that would destroy his authority if discovered. And I'm helping him manage it, in private, where no one needs to know. That's it. That's the entire conspiracy. Astrid stared at her for a long moment, processing. Finally, she released Lyra's throat, stepping back. You're protecting him? Yes. From what? I can't tell you that. He specifically forbade it. But it's serious enough that he allows a human, a treaty bride he barely knows, into his private chambers night after night to help manage it. Astrid's expression shifted, suspicion giving way to calculation. And serious enough that you risk your life to keep his secret. Yes. They stood in tense silence, Astrid clearly wrestling with competing instincts. Finally, she made a decision. If you're lying, if you're using whatever trust he's placed in you to harm him, I will kill you slowly. Do you understand? Yes. But if you're telling the truth, Astrid's jaw clenched, then I'll help you keep this secret, whatever it is. Because despite your weakness, despite your humanity, you're right about one thing. Discovery would be catastrophic. Lyra sagged against the wall with relief. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'll be watching you, closely. One wrong move, one hint of betrayal, and you'll kill me slowly. I understand. Astrid nodded curtly, then left without another word, disappearing into the shadows with the silence of a natural predator. Lyra remained in the alcove for several minutes, heart racing, trying to process what had just happened. She'd been caught, threatened, and somehow convinced Kael's most loyal commander to become complicit in the deception. When she finally reached his chambers, Kael took one look at her face and knew something was wrong. What happened? Lyra told him everything, watching his expression darken with each word. By the time she finished, his hands were clenched into fists. Astrid knows. Not specifically what she knows, but she suspects something serious and she's agreed to help keep it secret. Or she's agreed to appear helpful while she investigates further. Kael paced, clearly agitated. This is exactly what I feared. Once one person knows, the secret spreads like infection. Soon the entire court will be, she won't tell. Lyra stepped into his path, stopping his pacing. I saw her eyes, Kael. She's loyal to you, genuinely loyal. Not because she fears you, but because she believes in you. Loyalty means nothing when personal gain is at stake. Then what about my loyalty? I have everything to gain from exposing you, my freedom, my father's gratitude, escape from this arrangement, yet here I am, risking everything to protect your secret. She placed her hands on his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her palms. Not everyone is motivated by personal gain. Some of us actually care about others' well-being. Kael looked down at her hands, at her face, and something in his expression cracked. You shouldn't. Care about me, I mean. I've given you no reason to. You don't have to give me reasons. I do it anyway. He raised one hand slowly, as if expecting her to flinch away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek with surprising gentleness. You're the strangest human I've ever encountered. I'll take that as a compliment. It was meant as one. His thumb traced her jawline, and Lyra felt warmth flood through her that had nothing to do with her gift. Tomorrow is the full moon, the binding ceremony. After that, there's no going back. You'll be tied to me, to this kingdom, to whatever fate awaits us both, for life. I know. You could still refuse. Run. I wouldn't stop you. Yes, you would. The treaty? Damn the treaty. The words came out fierce. If you want to leave, I'll find another way to maintain peace with the southern kingdoms. But I won't trap you here against your will. Not when you've shown me more genuine kindness than anyone in this cursed citadel has in 5 years. Lyra's breath caught. This was her chance, her escape, freedom from a life of hostility and danger and leaving him alone with his curse. Alone with his agony. Alone in a court full of people who would turn on him the moment they sensed weakness. I'm not leaving, she said quietly. Lyra, I'm not leaving, she repeated, stronger now. Tomorrow I'll undergo the binding ceremony. I'll become your mate, your queen, whatever this kingdom demands. And every night after that, I'll be here, helping you endure what no one should have to endure alone. Kael's eyes searched hers, looking for doubt, for deception. Finding neither, he pulled her into an embrace that was half desperation, half gratitude. You're going to regret this, he murmured against her hair. This life, this kingdom, this cursed king. Probably. Lyra allowed herself to sink into his warmth just for a moment. But I'll regret it with you. That counts for something. They stood like that until the curse flared, pain breaking through Kael's control. Then Lyra guided him to the chair, placed her hands on his temples, and absorbed until he could breathe again. Tomorrow would bring the binding ceremony. The full moon, whatever transformation that entailed. But tonight, in the quiet darkness of his chambers, they weren't king and treaty bride. They were just two people helping each other survive impossible circumstances. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. The full moon rose blood red over Ravenscar Citadel, and Lyra felt its pull even though she couldn't shift. Maya had spent hours preparing her, dressing her in ceremonial robes of white and silver, colors that symbolize purity and submission in wolf tradition. The fabric was impossibly fine, almost translucent in certain light, and it left her arms bare for the marking that would come. "You're shaking," Maya whispered, fastening the final clasp at Lyra's throat. "Are you frightened?" "Terrified," Lyra admitted. She'd asked Kyle what to expect during the binding ceremony, but he'd been evasive, saying only that it would hurt and that she needed to endure without screaming. The less detail he'd provided, the more her imagination had filled in horrifying possibilities. "The Alpha King hasn't bound himself to anyone in 5 years. Not since—" Maya trailed off, but Lyra heard what she didn't say. "Not since the curse. The court is taking bets on whether you'll survive it." "That's encouraging." "I didn't mean—" Maya's face crumpled. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. It's just the full moon affects them all, makes them more volatile, more aggressive. And the Alpha King, he's—" She stopped again, clearly struggling with what to reveal. "He's what?" Lyra turned to face her directly. "Maya, please. I need to know what I'm walking into." Maya glanced at the door nervously, then leaned close. "The full moon is worst for him. Whatever he's dealing with, and I don't know what, I swear I don't. It intensifies during the transformation. Last full moon, they had to clear the entire east wing. His roars could be heard throughout the citadel. It sounded like he was being torn apart." Lyra's blood ran cold. She'd helped Kyle through bad nights when the curse flared so violently she'd thought it might actually kill him. But she'd never seen him during a full moon, never witnessed what happened when his wolf nature collided with the curse's dark magic. "How long does it last?" "The transformation? Hours. But the effects linger for days." Maya's eyes were sympathetic. "You'll be alone with him during his most vulnerable time. If something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong," Lyra said with more confidence than she felt. "I can help him. I've been helping him." Maya's expression shifted to something like understanding. "So the rumors are true. You do visit his chambers. It's not what the court thinks." "I know." Maya managed a small smile. "I've seen how you look at him when you think no one's watching, and how he looks at you. Whatever's happening between you two, it's more than politics." Before Lyra could respond, heavy footsteps approached. The door opened to reveal Astrid, dressed in full ceremonial armor, her face an unreadable mask. "It's time," she announced. "The court has assembled." Lyra's stomach twisted into knots, but she forced herself to stand, to move forward. Maya squeezed her hand briefly, a gesture of support that meant more than words could express. The walk to the Great Hall felt like a descent into execution. Every corridor they passed was lined with wolves, some in human form, others shifted, all watching with eyes that gleamed in the torchlight. The air itself felt charged, electric with the full moon's influence. When they reached the Great Hall's entrance, Astrid paused, her hand on the massive door. For a moment, her professional mask cracked, revealing something almost like concern. "Whatever happens in there," she said quietly, "don't run. Don't scream. Show no fear. The moment they sense weakness, they'll turn on you like a pack on wounded prey." Comforting. "I'm serious." Astrid's grip tightened on Lyra's shoulder. "You've somehow earned the Alpha King's protection. Don't waste it by showing cowardice during the binding." The doors opened. The Great Hall had been transformed into something primal and terrifying. Every torch burned with crimson-tinted flames. The usual banquet tables had been removed, leaving a vast open space where hundreds of wolves gathered, most in human form, but some already shifted, pacing the perimeter with restless energy. And at the center, a raised platform of black stone inscribed with symbols that seemed to writhe in the flickering light. Standing on that platform, waiting, was Kyle. He wore ceremonial armor that looked ancient, marked with symbols similar to those on the stone. His hair was loose, falling past his shoulders, and his eyes, those amber eyes, were already more wolf than human. When he looked at Lyra, she felt the impact of that gaze like a physical force. Beside him stood an elderly woman in robes covered with moon phases. The high priestess, Lyra realized. The one who had performed the binding ritual. Counselor Theron stepped forward, his voice carrying through the assembled crowd. We gather under the full moon to witness the binding of Alpha King Kael Draven to Lyra Vance, offered by the Southern Kingdoms as symbol of alliance and peace. Let all who oppose this union speak now or hold their silence forever. Silence. But it was hostile, resentful silence. The wolves might not openly challenge their Alpha King, but they made their disapproval known in every rigid posture, every curled lip. Then let the human approach. Lyra walked forward, forcing each step to remain steady despite legs that wanted to collapse. The crowd parted reluctantly, wolves pressing close enough that she felt their heat, smelled their wild scents. Someone growled as she passed, a low, threatening sound that raised every hair on her body. She reached the platform and climbed the steps. Up close, Kael looked barely in control. Sweat beaded his forehead despite the cold, and fine tremors ran through his body, the curse fighting against the full moon's pull, creating a war inside him. Their eyes met, and for just a moment she saw past the Alpha King to the man beneath, the man who was suffering, the man she'd promised not to abandon. "Kneel," the high priestess commanded. Lyra knelt, and Kael knelt across from her. The priestess began chanting in a language Lyra didn't recognize, something old and guttural that seemed to make the very air vibrate. She moved between them, marking their foreheads with ash, their palms with what looked like blood. "The binding requires sacrifice," the priestess announced, switching to common tongue. "Blood to blood, pain to pain, life to life. The human must accept the Alpha King's mark, and in doing so, bind herself to his fate. Should she reject the mark, the binding fails, and she dies." Lyra's heart hammered. No one mentioned dying. "All bindings carry risk," the priestess replied without sympathy. "Especially between species, your human weakness may not survive the Alpha's strength." "Do it anyway," Lyra said, surprising herself. She looked at Kael. "I'm not afraid." That was a lie. She was absolutely terrified. But she'd meant what she told him last night. She wouldn't abandon him to face his curse alone. Kael's expression flickered with something that might have been admiration or concern. "This will hurt," he warned, his voice rougher than usual. "More than anything you've experienced. If you need to stop, I won't stop." The priestess raised her arms, and the chanting intensified. Other voices joined her, wolves around the hall picking up the ancient words, creating a sound that was simultaneously beautiful and horrifying. "Begin," the priestess commanded. Kael reached for Lyra's arm, and the moment his fingers touched her skin, power exploded between them. Not the gentle warmth of her gift, but something wild and overwhelming, his wolf nature surging forward, seeking to claim, to mark, to bind. Lyra gasped as pain lanced through her arm where he touched. It felt like burning, like ice, like every nerve was being rewritten at a cellular level. She could feel his wolf trying to imprint on her, could feel the binding magic wrapping around them both like chains of light and shadow. And beneath it all, she felt the curse. It rose up like a living thing, enraged by the binding, fighting to reject this connection. Dark magic clashed with binding magic, and Kael's body went rigid, a sound of pure agony tearing from his throat. "No," Lyra breathed. The curse was going to destroy the binding, destroy him, destroy everything. Without thinking, she did what she'd done 100 times in his chambers. She reached for the curse with her gift, pulling it toward herself, absorbing the worst of its fury. The reaction was instantaneous and catastrophic. Power exploded outward from their joined hands, a shockwave of magic that sent the high priestess stumbling backward. Gasps erupted from the assembled wolves as the binding symbols on the platform blazed with light so bright it was nearly blinding. And Lyra felt the curse flow into her. Not just echoes anymore, not just borrowed pain, the actual curse, responding to her gift, seeing her as a new vessel, attempting to transfer from Kael to her. She screamed then, couldn't help it. The agony was beyond anything she'd imagined, like every cell in her body was being consumed by invisible fire, like her bones were shattering and reforming, like her mind was being shredded by claws made of darkness. "Release her," someone shouted. Astrid, maybe, or Theron, but Kael's hand tightened on her arm. "Don't," he gritted out. "If she releases now, the binding fails." she dies. If she doesn't release, the curse will kill her. Astrid's voice was desperate. Lyra felt it then. The choice the curse was offering. Accept me fully, and I'll leave him. Take all his pain, all his suffering, and he'll be free. All you have to do is surrender. Through the agony, through the fear, Lyra understood. This was the curse's nature. It fed on strength, on power, on wolf kings. But it would settle for a human girl if that human was stupid enough to offer herself willingly. She could save him, right now. Take the curse entirely, let it destroy her instead, and Kyle would finally be free. Her mouth opened to accept. No! Kael's roar shook the hall. His wolf surged forward completely, amber eyes blazing with power and fury. The curse is mine. You don't get to take it from me. You don't get to sacrifice yourself for... His words cut off as transformation began. Not the smooth shift that most wolves accomplished easily, but something violent and wrong. His body contorted, bones cracking, muscles tearing. The curse was fighting the transformation, trying to prevent it, creating a nightmare hybrid of man and beast that shouldn't exist. Lyra watched in horror as Kael's form twisted, grew, became something monstrous. His face elongated into a wolf's muzzle, but wrong. Too many teeth, eyes too aware, too tormented. His hands became claws that looked like they could tear through steel. His body expanded until he stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in fur that seemed to writhe with dark energy. The curse had transformed him into something neither fully man nor fully wolf. An abomination. The court erupted into chaos. Wolves scattered, some shifting defensively, others fleeing entirely. The high priestess backed away, chanting protective prayers. But Lyra didn't run. The monstrous form that had been Kyle turned to her, lips pulled back from fangs designed to kill. Intelligence flickered in those amber eyes, but also madness. 5 years of curse-driven pain finally breaking through his iron control, unleashed by the binding ritual's intensity. "Kyle," Lyra whispered. Her arm still bore his partial mark, the binding incomplete but present. She could feel him through it, feel the war raging inside him between man, wolf, and curse. "I'm still here. I'm not afraid of you." The creature snarled, a sound that promised violence. It took a step toward her, claws scraping against stone. "You should run, human," Theron called from somewhere in the chaos. "He's lost control. He'll kill you." But Lyra stood her ground. She'd seen Kyle at his weakest, his most vulnerable. She'd held his suffering in her own body, knew the depth of agony he endured every moment. This form, this monstrous transformation, was just another manifestation of that suffering. "I know you're in there," she said steadily, taking a step closer to the creature. "I know this isn't what you want to be. The curse is making you into this, but you're stronger than it. You've been fighting it for 5 years. Don't let it win now." The creature's head tilted, confusion warring with rage in those too aware eyes. "Remember what I told you," Lyra continued, taking another step. They were close now, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from its twisted form, could smell the blood where transformation had torn flesh. "I'm not leaving. I'm not abandoning you. Whatever form you take, whatever the curse does, I'm staying." "Lyra, get back." Astrid had drawn her sword, was moving to intercept, but Lyra was done listening to others' fear. She closed the final distance and placed both hands on the creature's chest, right over where a human heart would beat. And she pulled. Not just the curse this time, but everything. The pain, the rage, the madness. The 5 years of suffering compressed into this single moment. She pulled it all into herself with every ounce of her gift, accepting it, channeling it, refusing to let it destroy the man she'd come to care for. The creature, Kyle, threw back its head and roared. But this time, the sound carried relief alongside agony. Light exploded from where Lyra's hands touched him. Not the dark light of the curse, but something pure and bright. The binding magic, recognizing what she was doing, surged to help. The symbols on the platform blazed to life, creating a circle of power around them both. Through the connection, Lyra felt the curse recoil. It didn't want to be absorbed, didn't want to be channeled. It wanted to destroy, to corrupt, to cause maximum suffering. But Lyra held on, gritting her teeth against pain that made her earlier suffering seem trivial by comparison. "You will not have him," she gritted out. "Not today, not ever." The creature's form began to shift again, but this time in reverse. The monstrous hybrid receded, bones resetting with audible cracks, muscles reforming into human configuration. Kale collapsed to his knees, gasping, as his body completed the transformation back to human form. But the curse wasn't done. Denied its victory, it lashed out, not at Kale this time, but at Lyra. Dark energy slammed into her like a physical blow, and she felt something inside her chest crack. Not her ribs, not anything physical, something deeper. The curse was trying to destroy her gift, trying to eliminate the one thing that had been draining its power. Lyra's vision blurred. Blood trickled from her nose, her ears. Her knees buckled, and she would have fallen if Kyle hadn't caught her. "No," he breathed, his voice fully human again but raw with desperation. "No, you stupid, brave, impossible girl. What did you do?" "Saved you," Lyra managed through lips that felt numb. "Worth it." "The curse, it's attacking her gift," the high priestess said, having approached now that Kyle was human again. She examined Lyra with clinical assessment. "It's trying to eliminate her ability to absorb pain. If it succeeds, she'll lose the one defense that's kept her alive this long. The binding's power might sustain her, or it might save her." Kyle's command carried the full weight of his authority. "I don't care what it costs. Save her." "I don't know if I can. The curse is—" "Then finish the binding." Kale grabbed Lyra's arm, the one he'd partially marked. "Complete it. Now. If she's fully bound to me, she'll have access to my strength, my healing. It might be enough. Or it might kill her instantly. She's human, my king. Human bodies aren't meant to sustain wolf bonds. The shock alone— Do you have a better plan?" Kale's eyes blazed with desperate fury. "Because I'm not watching her die to save me. Not happening." The high priestess hesitated, then nodded sharply. "Hold her steady, and pray to the old spirits that her body doesn't reject the bond entirely." Kale pulled Lyra against his chest, one hand supporting her head, the other gripping her marked arm. She could barely focus, barely think through the pain radiating from her chest where the curse had struck. The priestess began chanting again, faster this time, more urgent. She sliced her own palm, let blood drip onto Lyra's partial mark, then onto Kyle's hand. "Blood to blood," she intoned. "Life to life. Let the bond be sealed in sacrifice and strength. Let the human be transformed, elevated, made worthy of the Wolf King's claim." Power surged through the binding mark, and Lyra screamed as it raced through her veins like liquid fire. She felt Kyle's strength flooding into her, overwhelming her fragile human system. Her heart raced, trying to keep up with the influx of energy. Her bones felt like they were being reinforced, her muscles strengthening, her senses suddenly sharpening to impossible acuity. And beneath it all, she felt the curse, still present in Kyle, but now also connected to her through the completed bond. She could sense its fury, its frustration that it couldn't fully eliminate either of them without destroying both. "You think you've won," the curse seemed to whisper directly into her mind. "You've only bound yourself to his doom. When I finally break him, I'll break you too." "Try it," Lyra whispered back, finding strength somewhere in her core. "We'll fight you together now. Twice as hard for you to destroy." The curse recoiled, and for just a moment, Lyra felt its uncertainty. It had been created to torment a single wolf king, not to contend with a bonded pair that could share the burden. The binding completed with a flash of light that illuminated the entire hall. When it faded, Lyra found herself lying in Kyle's arms, breathing hard but alive. The pain in her chest had dulled to a manageable ache, and her gift, she could still feel it, battered but intact. The mark on her arm had changed. What had been a partial symbol was now complete, an intricate design of thorns and wolves that wrapped from her wrist to her shoulder. It pulsed with faint light, matching her heartbeat. And through it, she felt Kyle. Not just his presence, but his emotions, his pain, his fierce relief that she was alive. "You're insane," he murmured against her hair, holding her like she might disappear. Completely, utterly inane. "Had to be," Lyra managed, her voice hoarse, "to survive you." Around them, the court slowly emerged from their panic. Wolves who'd fled began creeping back, staring at the scene on the platform. Their alpha king holding his human bride, both marked, both alive despite everything that should have killed them. Astrid approached cautiously, sword still drawn. My king, are you yourself? I'm in control, Kale confirmed, though his voice carried exhaustion. The transformation, the curse tried to prevent it, tried to turn me into that thing, but she... He looked down at Lyra. She pulled enough of the curse's power to let me retain my humanity. The human is stronger than she appears, the high priestess observed, her tone carrying grudging respect. She survived a full wolf binding. I've never seen that accomplished before. Because it's never been necessary before, Theron interjected, his expression grave. The binding should have been ceremonial, symbolic, but the curse turned it into a battle. My king, the court witnessed your loss of control. They saw the monstrous form. Questions will be raised. Let them raise questions, Kael said, his arms tightening protectively around Lyra. I've spent 5 years hiding weakness. I'm done with secrets. The curse exists. It nearly destroyed me during the binding, but she... He lifted Lyra's marked arm for all to see. She fought it back. My human bride showed more courage and strength than any warrior in this court. Silence. Shocked, uncertain silence. Then Lord Corvin stepped forward, his expression twisted with contempt. Courage? She's contaminated you. Whatever that thing was during the transformation, it wasn't natural. It was an abomination. And it manifested because she interfered with... Because I'm cursed. Kael cut him off, his voice carrying deadly calm. My uncle's dying curse. For 5 years I've endured constant agony. The transformation you witnessed was the curse trying to prevent my wolf from emerging properly. Lyra didn't cause that. She prevented it from being worse. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The secret was out, spoken openly in front of the entire court. A curse? Another noble breathed. For 5 years? How is that possible? How have you ruled effectively while... Why didn't you tell us? Because you would have done exactly what you're doing now, Kael replied. Question my fitness to rule, challenge my authority, fragment this kingdom into civil war. He stood, pulling Lyra up with him despite her shaky legs. But I'm done hiding. Yes, I'm cursed. Yes, I suffer constantly. And yes, I've maintained this throne despite that suffering because I'm stronger than any curse, any pain, any challenge you could possibly present. He turned slowly, meeting the eyes of every noble, every warrior, every wolf who'd gathered to witness the binding. If any of you believe the curse makes me weak, if any of you think this is your opportunity to seize power, then step forward now, challenge me, fight me, discover personally whether constant pain has dulled my fangs or sharpened them. No one moved. The threat in his voice was absolute. That's what I thought. Kael's gaze swept the hall one final time. The binding is complete. Lyra Vance is now my mate, my queen, with all the rights and protections that entails. Anyone who harms her, insults her, or questions her position answers to me directly. Understood? Murmurs of reluctant assent. But Lyra could feel the hostility, could sense that this revelation had shifted something fundamental in the court's dynamics. They knew now. The Alpha King was compromised, and compromised kings attracted challengers like blood attracted sharks. Kael must have sensed it too, because his jaw tightened. Dismissed. All of you. The binding ceremony is concluded. The court dispersed slowly, nobles and warriors filing out while shooting looks at Lyra that ranged from curiosity to outright malice. Astrid lingered, her expression troubled. My king, perhaps we should... Not now, Astrid. Kael's voice softened slightly. I need to ensure my mate recovers from the binding. We'll discuss security measures in the morning. Astrid nodded, but her eyes met Lyra's with a message. This isn't over. Be ready. Finally, they were alone except for the high priestess, who was gathering her ritual implements. You've complicated everything, she said without looking up. Revealing the curse openly, binding yourself to a human, creating new vulnerabilities for your enemies to exploit. I know. Then why do it? Kael looked down at Lyra, still held against his side. Because hiding was destroying me faster than the curse ever could, and because she deserves better than being a secret. The priestess finally met his gaze, her ancient eyes seeing more than most. You care for her, truly care. Yes. Then protect her. What happened here tonight will have consequences. The court knows you're cursed. They know she can somehow help with that curse. They'll view her as both a weakness and a resource to be exploited. I won't let anyone touch her. You may not have a choice. The priestess gathered the last of her items. Curses have a way of finding the worst possible moment to strike. And you've just painted a target on both your backs by revealing yours. She left, and the vast hall fell silent except for the crackling of torches. Kyle finally allowed himself to sag, exhaustion crashing over him. Lyra felt it through the bond, the toll the transformation had taken, the curse still writhing in his system, the emotional weight of revealing his greatest secret to a court full of potential enemies. "Can you walk?" he asked quietly. "I think so." Lyra tested her legs. They held, though everything felt different now, stronger, sharper. The world looked clearer, colors more vivid. She could hear conversations from the courtyard below, smell individual scents from wolves who'd left minutes ago. The bond. It's changing me. The binding grants you access to some wolf abilities. Enhanced senses, increased strength, accelerated healing. But you'll never shift. Your human nature is too fundamental. "I don't want to shift," Lyra said honestly. "I just want to survive whatever comes next." "Smart girl." Kale managed a tired smile. "Let's get you to our chambers. You need rest." "Our chambers?" "You're my mate now. Your quarters in the East Wing won't suffice. You'll stay with me, where I can protect you properly." They made their way through empty corridors, both leaning on each other for support. When they reached Kael's private suite, he locked the door behind them with multiple mechanisms, standard locks, magical wards, barriers that would alert him to any intrusion. "You're expecting trouble," Lyra observed. "I'm always expecting trouble, but now—" He led her to the bed, helped her sit. "Now I've given them specific reason to act. The curse is known. My vulnerability exposed. And you, my impossible human mate, are the only thing standing between me and complete breakdown when the curse intensifies. So I'm a target. You were always a target, now you're a valuable one." Kale knelt before her, taking her hands. "Lyra, I need you to understand what you've gotten yourself into. The binding is permanent. You can't undo it, can't escape it. And the danger you were in before is nothing compared to what's coming." "Then we face it together." Lyra squeezed his hands. "That's what mates do, isn't it?" "In theory. In practice, most mates aren't dealing with blood curses and hostile courts and—" He stopped abruptly, his body going rigid. Through the bond, Lyra felt a spike of agony so intense it stole her breath. "Kael?" "The curse," he gritted out. "Attacking. It's angry. Angry that it failed to kill you, failed to prevent the binding. It's—" His words cut off as pain doubled him over. Lyra immediately placed her hands on his face, pulling the curse's fury into herself. It came easier now, flowing through the bond they shared, distributing between them. Still agonizing, but bearable when split between two. "That's better," Kael breathed after several minutes. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. We're in this together now, remember?" They helped each other to the bed, both exhausted beyond measure. Lyra expected Kael to maintain distance, to claim the far side of the massive bed for himself. Instead, he pulled her close, tucking her against his chest. "Sleep," he murmured. "Tomorrow, we deal with the fallout. Tonight, just stay." Lyra closed her eyes, feeling his heartbeat through the bond, steady and strong despite everything. She'd survived the binding, survived the curse's attack, survived being revealed to a hostile court as the Alpha King's greatest weakness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, new enemies emerging from shadows. But tonight, in the darkness of his chambers, held in the arms of a cursed king who'd somehow become more than just a political arrangement, Lyra felt something she hadn't experienced since arriving at Ravenscar Citadel. She felt safe. The feeling lasted exactly 3 hours. Lyra woke to chaos, alarms blaring, voices shouting, the acrid smell of smoke. Kale was already on his feet, pulling on clothes with practiced efficiency. "What's happening?" Lyra demanded. "Attack," Kale replied grimly. He tossed her a heavy cloak. "Get dressed, quickly." Through the bond, she felt his battle readiness, his cold fury, and beneath it the curse flaring in response to stress, making every movement cost him dearly. A pounding on the door. "My king!" Astrid's voice, urgent. "The West Tower is burning. Someone poisoned the water supply to prevent us from fighting the fire. And She paused, and Lyra heard genuine fear in her voice for the first time. Lord Corvin has declared a formal challenge to your rule. He's claiming the curse makes you unfit, and that tonight's revelation proves it. He's gathering supporters in the main courtyard. Kale's hands clenched into fists. How many? Nearly half the court, more joining by the minute. Lyra felt ice flood her veins. This was it. The consequences the High Priestess had warned about. The enemies emerging from shadows. And in the middle of it all, she felt something else through the bond. The curse intensifying, feeding on Kael's stress, growing stronger. It had been waiting for this, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and that moment had arrived. Kael strode toward the door, but Lyra grabbed his arm, feeling the curse's violent pulse through their bond. Wait, you can barely stand. If you go out there like this, I don't have a choice. His voice was steel despite the tremor in his hands. If I don't answer Corvin's challenge immediately, it validates every claim he's making about my weakness. Then let me help first. Lyra placed both hands on his chest, pulling hard on the curse's energy. It resisted, clinging to him like a parasite, unwilling to release its host. She pulled harder, gritting her teeth against the familiar burn. Through the door, Astrid called urgently. My king, Corvin is demanding your presence. He's given you 10 minutes before he declares you forfeit by cowardice. Let him wait. Kael's eyes locked on Lyra's as she continued channeling the curse's fury. Just another minute. Lyra felt the dark magic finally begin to flow, draining from him into her. The pain was immense, but manageable now that the bond distributed it between them. She pulled until Kael's breathing steadied, until the violent tremors subsided enough that he could function. Enough, he said, gently removing her hands. Save your strength. You're coming with me. What? No, I'll slow you down. You're my mate now, my queen. If I face Corvin alone, it looks like I'm protecting you because you're weak. But if you stand beside me, his expression hardened, it sends a different message entirely. Astrid burst through the door the moment Kael opened it, her armor scorched, a bleeding gash across her cheek. We need to move. The fire is spreading, and Corvin's gathering more supporters. Theron is trying to maintain order, but she noticed Lyra. You're bringing her? She stays with me. Kael's tone allowed no argument. He grabbed a sword from the wall, testing its weight. Update me on our position while we walk. They moved quickly through corridors already filling with smoke. Astrid kept pace, her voice clipped and professional despite the chaos. Corvin made his move during the shift change when guards were transitioning. The fire started in the armory, deliberate, designed to eliminate our weapons supply. Someone poisoned the well water with a compound that makes it accelerate flames rather than extinguish them. Classic insurgency tactics. How many are with him? Kael asked. At least 50 confirmed. Maybe double that in quiet supporters who haven't openly declared yet. He's claiming you've endangered the kingdom by binding yourself to a human, that the curse will eventually destroy you and leave us leaderless, and that tonight's monstrous transformation proved you've lost control. Convenient timing, Lyra muttered. He planned this before the binding ceremony even happened. Astrid shot her a sharp look. Smart girl. Yes, this was orchestrated. The binding ceremony just gave him the excuse he needed to act. They emerged into the main courtyard, and Lyra's breath caught at the scene before her. Fire consumed the west tower, flames reaching toward the night sky, while wolves in both human and shifted forms tried desperately to contain it with dirt and stone, unable to use water. The courtyard itself was packed with bodies, hundreds of wolves divided into clear factions. On one side, those still loyal to Kael. On the other, a growing crowd surrounding Lord Corvin. The nobleman stood on a makeshift platform, his presence commanding. He'd shifted partially, a technique that gave him wolf strength while maintaining human speech, and his voice carried across the courtyard with unnatural amplification. The Alpha King finally graces us with his presence, Corvin announced. Though I see he brings his human pet as a shield. How fitting! Angry murmurs from Corvin's supporters. Lyra felt Kael tense beside her, felt the curse flare in response to his rising anger. Lord Corvin, Kael's voice cut through the noise like a blade. You've declared challenge while the citadel burns. That's not honor. That's opportunistic cowardice. Cowardice? Corvin laughed. Says the king who hid a debilitating curse for 5 years while pretending to be whole. Who bound himself to a human because he's too weak to maintain control without her magical assistance. Who transformed into an abomination before the entire court, proving the curse has corrupted him beyond redemption. The curse hasn't corrupted anything, Kyle replied, his voice deadly calm. It's tested me, daily, endlessly, and I've maintained this throne despite it. That's not weakness, Corvin. That's strength you can't possibly comprehend. Strength? Corvin gestured to the burning tower. Your strength has left us vulnerable. Your obsession with hiding weakness has prevented you from seeking proper treatment, from finding healers who might actually cure you. Instead, you've latched onto a human girl's parlor tricks and called it a solution. Be very careful how you speak about my mate, Kael warned. Or what? You'll lose control again? Transform into that monster we all witnessed? That's precisely my point, Kael. You're no longer fit to rule. The curse will destroy you, and it will take this kingdom with it unless we act now. The crowd murmured agreement. Lyra saw wolves she'd never met, nobles whose names she didn't know, all nodding along with Corvin's rhetoric. The court was fracturing before their eyes. You want to challenge me? Kyle stepped forward, hand on his sword. Then do it properly. Single combat, no supporters, no interference, just you and me. I think not. Corvin's smile was poisonous. Single combat assumes equal footing. But you're cursed, Kael, diminished. It would be like fighting a wounded animal, victory without honor. Instead, I propose we let the court decide. A vote of confidence. If the majority supports your continued rule despite the curse, I'll stand down. But if they agree you've become a liability, then what? Kyle interrupted. You take the throne? You, who've never led warriors into battle? Who've spent more time politicking than protecting this kingdom's borders? I have the support of this court's finest warriors, Corvin gestured to the crowd behind him, including Commander Astrid's own lieutenant, who's sworn to my cause. Astrid went rigid. Marcus, that traitorous bastard. A young warrior stepped forward from Corvin's faction, his expression apologetic but resolved. I'm sorry, Commander, but Lord Corvin is right. The Alpha King is compromised. We need leadership that isn't constantly fighting internal demons. You swore an oath to the throne, Astrid snarled, and I'm honoring it by trying to save the kingdom from a cursed king who will eventually drag us all down with him. More voices joined in support of Corvin. The crowd was turning, seduced by his logic, his promises of stability. Lyra felt desperation clawing at her chest. They were losing ground, losing support, and Kael, through the bond, she felt him fighting to maintain composure while the curse burned through him, feeding on stress. This was exactly what the curse wanted. Maximum chaos, maximum suffering. Lyra stepped forward before conscious thought could stop her. You're all idiots, she announced clearly. The courtyard fell silent. Hundreds of golden eyes turned to her, most shocked that she dared speak at all. Corvin recovered first, his smile widening. The human speaks. How charming. Tell me, girl, do you have something relevant to contribute? Or are you simply providing comic relief? I'm providing perspective you're all too blind to see. Lyra's voice shook, but she forced herself to continue. You're so focused on the curse being a weakness that you've completely missed what it actually represents. And what would that be? Corvin's tone dripped condescension. Proof of strength. Lyra gestured to Kyle. He's been cursed for 5 years. 5 years of constant, unrelenting agony that would have broken most of you in 5 days. And during those 5 years, what happened to this kingdom? Did it fall into chaos? Did enemies conquer your borders? Did the wolf clans fracture into civil war? Silence. Uncomfortable shifting. No, Lyra continued, gaining confidence. This kingdom prospered, expanded its territory, maintained dominance over the northern regions, and the man who accomplished all that did it while fighting a war inside his own body every single moment. So tell me, which requires more strength? Leading while healthy or leading while cursed? Pretty speech, Corvin interjected, but it doesn't change facts. The curse exists. It's weakening him. Eventually it will destroy him completely. Tonight's transformation proved that. Tonight's transformation proved he's still fighting it, Lyra shot back. The curse tried to prevent his wolf from emerging properly. It tried to turn him into something mindless and destructive. And yes, it partially succeeded, for about 30 seconds, until he regained control through sheer willpower. "With your help," someone called from the crowd. "Yes, with my help. That's what mates do. That's what partnerships mean. Alone, the curse might eventually overwhelm him. Together, we're stronger than it is." Lyra turned to address the full court. "You're all standing here debating whether a cursed king can lead effectively, but you're asking the wrong question. The real question is, do you want a king who understands suffering? Who knows what it means to fight impossible battles every single day? Or do you want someone like Corvin, who's never faced real adversity in his privileged life?" "How dare you?" Corvin began. "I dare because I've seen what real strength looks like." Lyra's voice rose, powered by weeks of suppressed frustration. "I've watched your Alpha King endure agony that would make trained warriors weep. I felt the curse trying to destroy him from within. And every single time, he's chosen to keep fighting rather than surrender. That's the kind of strength that builds kingdoms. That's the kind of leader worth following." She paused, letting her words sink in. "As for me being human, yes, I can't shift. I'll never be a warrior. But I have a gift that your Alpha King needs, and I'm using it to help him survive so he can continue protecting all of you. If you're too proud or too stupid to see the value in that, then maybe Corvin is right. Maybe you don't deserve a king who sacrifices everything for your benefit." The silence that followed was different now, thoughtful rather than hostile. Then a voice spoke up. Theron, the counselor, stepping forward from the neutral ground between factions. "The human makes valid points. Our kingdom has flourished under King Kael's rule, curse or no curse. Prosperity and stability speak louder than speculation about future weakness." "She's also right about strength," another voice added, an older warrior Lyra didn't recognize. "I've fought battles, lost comrades, endured injuries that should have killed me, but 5 years of constant curse pain?" He shook his head. "I wouldn't last 5 weeks. If the Alpha King has maintained rule while enduring that, he's stronger than any of us." More murmurs of agreement. The tide was shifting, opinions reconsidering. Corvin's expression darkened. "You're letting a human manipulate you with emotional appeals. This isn't about feelings, it's about practical governance. A cursed king is a liability, regardless of how stoically he suffers." "Then let's discuss practical outcomes," Theron suggested. "Under King Kael's rule, even cursed, we've achieved territorial expansion, successful trade agreements, military victories, and domestic stability. What exactly has the curse prevented him from accomplishing that you could do better?" Corvin fumbled for response, and Lyra saw the moment his carefully constructed argument began crumbling. "The curse will worsen," he insisted. "Tonight proved it can force transformation into monstrous forms. What happens when he loses control during a council meeting? During treaty negotiations? When visiting dignitaries witness him become an abomination? Then I'll be there to prevent it," Lyra stated simply. "That's my purpose as his mate, to absorb the curse's worst attacks, to keep him stable, to ensure he can continue ruling effectively. You want practical solutions? There's your solution. A partnership that addresses the curse's dangers while maintaining strong leadership." "You're asking us to stake the kingdom's future on an untested human's abilities? I'm asking you to have faith in the king who's earned it through 5 years of hidden suffering and continued excellence." Lyra met Corvin's eyes directly. "But if you need proof that our partnership works, I'll provide it, right now." She turned to Kyle, who'd been watching her with an expression caught between pride and concern. Through the bond, she felt his exhaustion, felt the curse writhing inside him, agitated by the confrontation. "Trust me," she whispered. Then, loud enough for the courtyard to hear, "Your Alpha King is in pain right now. The curse attacks during stress, during conflict. It's trying to weaken him for this very moment, hoping you'll see him falter and lose faith." She placed her hands on Kael's chest. "Watch what happens when we work together." Lyra pulled on the curse with everything she had, not subtly, not quietly, but visibly. Light flaring from their bond mark, power flowing from Kael into her. The crowd gasped as they witnessed it, watching curse energy manifest as dark tendrils that transferred from the Alpha King to his human mate. Pain crashed through Lyra like a tidal wave. The curse fought her, tried to maintain its grip on Kael, lashed out with concentrated fury. She gritted her teeth and pulled harder, accepting all of it, channeling the dark magic through the bond they shared. Kael's posture straightened. Color returned to his face. The fine tremor that had been constant since the binding ceremony faded entirely. When Lyra finally released him, stepping back on shaky legs, Kael stood before his court looking more powerful than he had in weeks. The curse was still present. Lyra could feel it through the bond, but distributed now, dampened, manageable. "This is what partnership looks like," Kael announced, his voice carrying clearly without effort. "My mate absorbs what would cripple me, allows me to function at full capacity. Alone, the curse is a weakness. Together, it's merely an inconvenience." He drew his sword in one fluid motion, the blade singing as it cleared the scabbard. "Lord Corvin, you've made accusations and stirred rebellion during a crisis. Regardless of your justifications, that's treason. I'm offering you one chance to stand down peacefully, swear renewed loyalty, and we'll address your concerns through proper channels." Corvin's face twisted with rage. "I don't negotiate with cursed kings and their human whores." He didn't finish the sentence. Kael moved with speed that shouldn't have been possible for someone who'd been curse-racked moments before, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. His sword stopped an inch from Corvin's throat. "Choose your next words very carefully," Kael said softly. "You can insult me, question my fitness, challenge my rule. But you will not speak about my mate with anything less than absolute respect. Understood?" Corvin swallowed hard, the sword's edge close enough to draw a thin line of blood. "Understood." "Good." Kael stepped back but kept his weapon ready. "Final offer. Stand down or face me in single combat right now. And before you claim unfair advantage, know that I'm currently at full strength thanks to Lyra. You'll be fighting me at my absolute best. Still want a challenge?" The crowd held its breath. Corvin looked around desperately, seeking support from his faction, but Lyra saw the doubt in their eyes. They'd witnessed Kael's transformation from curse-weakened to fully powerful in seconds. They'd heard Lyra's arguments and found them compelling. The certainty of Corvin's rebellion was cracking. Corvin's shoulders slumped. "I stand down, for now." "Swear it properly," Astrid demanded, moving to flank Kael. "Oath of loyalty, witnessed by the court." Corvin knelt reluctantly, the movement stiff with resentment. "I, Lord Corvin of House Shadowfen, swear renewed loyalty to Alpha King Kael Draven. I will not raise arms against him or challenge his rule while he holds the throne justly." "Witnessed!" Theron called out. "Oath accepted." Kael sheathed his sword. "Your supporters will disperse. Now. Anyone still gathered in opposition in 10 minutes will be considered an active rebellion and dealt with accordingly." The crowd broke apart rapidly, wolves returning to their respective duties or retreating to quarters. Corvin's faction melted away like snow under sun, leaving only the core loyalists and those who'd remained neutral. The fire in the West Tower was finally being contained, warriors using dirt and stone now that they understood water was compromised. The immediate crisis was passing, though smoke still filled the air. Astrid approached, her expression cautious. "My king, that was unexpected. I've never seen you move like that. The curse usually—" "The curse is still present," Kael confirmed, "but Lyra's ability to absorb and distribute it changes everything. As long as she's with me, I can function without the constant handicap." "Which makes her a target," Astrid said bluntly, looking at Lyra. Corvin backed down, but he's not defeated. He'll regroup. And next time, he'll know that the fastest way to weaken the Alpha King is to eliminate his human mate. "Let him try." Kael's arm wrapped around Lyra's shoulders, protective and possessive. "Anyone who touches her answers to me personally. Might not be enough if they move during a moment when you're separated, when she can't help with the curse." Astrid's tactical mind was clearly working through scenarios. "We need better security, personal guards for her at all times, restricted access to her quarters, food testers." "Food testers?" Lyra repeated faintly. "Poison is a classic assassination method," Astrid replied matter-of-factly, "especially against targets who can't be defeated through direct combat. You're human, Lyra, physically vulnerable despite the bond. That makes you the obvious weak point." The weight of that reality settled over Lyra like a shroud. She'd just helped turn the tide of a potential rebellion, had proven her value to the court, and in doing so, she'd painted an even larger target on her back. We'll implement security measures, Kael agreed. But first, we deal with the immediate aftermath. Theron, I need damage assessment on the tower. Casualty reports. Identification of whoever poisoned the water supply. Already investigating, my king. Theron bowed. Preliminary reports suggest insider assistance, someone with access to secured areas. Find them. Kael's voice dropped to something dangerous. And make an example that discourages future attempts. As Theron departed, more court members approached, some offering renewed loyalty, others simply curious about the human who'd shifted the balance of power with words rather than weapons. Lyra found herself fielding questions, accepting grudging respect from wolves who'd mocked her days earlier. It was surreal and exhausting and terrifying all at once. An older female warrior approached, scarred and battle-worn. The human speaks truth, she announced to those nearby. Strength isn't only physical. My daughter was born unable to shift, genetic defect. I watched her endure mockery, rejection, constant struggle. She developed mental resilience that puts most warriors to shame, eventually became our kingdom's finest strategist. The warrior looked at Lyra directly. You carry different strength, the kind that endures rather than dominates. That's valuable, even if these fools are too blind to see it immediately. Thank you, Lyra managed. Don't thank me yet. You've made enemies tonight by defending the Alpha King so effectively. Watch your back, girl. Not everyone will challenge openly like Corvin did. The woman walked away, leaving Lyra with renewed awareness of the danger she'd stepped into. The night dragged on with crisis management, organizing fire suppression, investigating the poisoning, securing the citadel against further attacks. Kael remained in control throughout, making decisions with clarity that impressed even his critics. And through it all, Lyra stayed at his side. When the curse flared during a heated argument with Corvin's former supporters, she was there to absorb it. When exhaustion threatened to break through his composure, she provided strength through their bond. They worked in silent synchronization, a partnership forged in literal fire and blood. It was nearly dawn when they finally returned to their chambers. Kael locked the door behind them and sagged against it, the facade of strength finally cracking. That was too close, he muttered. If you hadn't spoken up, but I did, Lyra guided him to a chair. And it worked. The court listened. Some of them listened. Others are just waiting for the next opportunity to strike. He pulled her onto his lap, holding her close. You were magnificent tonight. Terrifying and magnificent. Where did that come from? Weeks of being mocked and dismissed, Lyra admitted. It builds up pressure. Tonight, it finally exploded productively. Kael laughed, a genuine sound of surprised delight. Productively? Yes, I suppose starting a speech with "you're all idiots" could be considered productive diplomacy. It got their attention? It did indeed. His expression sobered. But Astrid is right. You're a target now, a known vulnerability. We need to be smarter about your protection. Or, Lyra twisted to face him directly. We use it as an advantage. They think I'm a weakness? Let them. They'll underestimate me, underestimate us, and when they make their move, we'll be ready. That's actually tactical thinking. Kael studied her face. You're adapting to this world faster than I expected. I'm learning from the best. A cursed king who spent 5 years surviving impossible circumstances. She touched his face gently. Speaking of which, how are you feeling? The curse must be furious after tonight. As if summoned by her words, pain flared through the bond, the curse lashing out, punishing Kael for the night's successes. He gasped, doubling over. Lyra immediately placed her hands on his temples, pulling the curse's fury into herself. It came with vengeful intensity, clearly enraged that its host had survived another challenge. She gritted her teeth and absorbed, distributed, channeled until Kael could breathe again. Better? She asked after several minutes. Better. He caught her hands, kissed her palms. Thank you. For everything tonight, for defending me, for making them see past their prejudices. Some of them, anyway. Corvin and his supporters are still problems. Problems for tomorrow. Kael stood, pulling her up with him. Tonight, or this morning technically, we've won a significant victory. The court knows the curse exists, but they also know we can manage it together. That changes everything. He was right. The secret was out. But rather than destroying Kyl's authority, it had been reframed as evidence of his strength. And Lyra, the disposable human bride, had become essential rather than ornamental. They'd survived the night, turned potential disaster into opportunity. But as dawnlight filtered through the narrow windows, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that this was merely the beginning. Corvin had backed down, not surrendered. Other enemies lurked in shadows, waiting for opportunities. And the curse itself seemed to pulse with dark promise through the bond, as if whispering, "This isn't over, not even close." Still, for this moment, wrapped in Kyl's arms while the citadel slowly recovered from the night's chaos, Lyra allowed herself to feel something dangerous. Hope. She'd proven her worth to a hostile court, helped her mate maintain control despite a blood curse designed to destroy him, stood before hundreds of predatory wolves and made them listen to human logic. Maybe, just maybe, she could actually survive this impossible situation. Maybe she could even thrive. The thought terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure, but she held on to it anyway, a fragile light against the darkness that would inevitably come. Because darkness always came in the Draven territories. But now, at least, she wouldn't face it alone. The attack came 3 days later, not from the direction anyone expected. Lyra was in the library, one of the few places in the Citadel where she felt relatively safe, researching blood curses and ancient text. Maya sat nearby, officially serving as attendant, but actually providing companionship in the echoing silence. 2 guards stood outside the door, Astrid's hand-picked warriors who'd proven loyal during Corvin's failed rebellion. Everything seemed secure, which was precisely when the poison hit. Lyra felt it before she tasted it, a wrongness flowing through the bond from Kyl, who was 3 floors away in a council meeting. His pain spiked suddenly, violently, different from the curse's usual burn. This was sharper, more immediate, spreading through his system like liquid fire. She dropped the book she'd been reading and ran. "Princess," Maya called after her, "wait for the guards!" But Lyra was already moving, enhanced speed from the bond carrying her faster than human limitation should allow. She burst through corridors, ignoring startled servants, following the thread of agony that connected her to Kyl. She reached the council chamber to find chaos. Kyl had collapsed across the table, convulsing, foam flecking his lips. Theron was shouting for physicians. Astrid had her sword drawn, scanning for threats. And standing near Kyl's overturned goblet, face pale with poorly concealed satisfaction, was Lord Corvin. "What did you do?" Lyra's voice cut through the panic like a whip crack. Corvin's eyes met hers, and she saw the calculation there. "I've done nothing. The Alpha King appears to be having a curse-related episode. Unfortunate timing, but..." "Liar!" Lyra shoved past Theron to reach Kyl's side. Through their bond, she felt the poison working, not natural venom, but something designed specifically to interact with curse magic, amplifying it, turning the existing affliction into a weapon against its host. Someone had studied Kyl's curse, understood it well enough to craft a poison that would make it kill him from within. The wine, Astrid realized, grabbing the goblet. Someone poisoned his wine. "Preposterous," Corvin blustered. "We all drank from the same—" "You didn't drink," Theron interrupted, his elderly eyes sharp. "I watched you. You raised your goblet but never actually swallowed. Why is that, Lord Corvin?" Corvin's composure cracked. The vintage didn't appeal to me. That's not a crime." "But poisoning the Alpha King is." Astrid's blade pressed against Corvin's throat before he could move. "You knew which cup would be served to him. You had opportunity and motive, and now he's dying while you stand there pretending innocence." "You have no proof," Corvin snarled. "This is clearly a curse episode. Everyone witnessed his instability during the binding ceremony. This is simply the inevitable progression of—" His words cut off as Lyra placed both hands on Kyl's chest and pulled. The poison curse hybrid flooded into her with overwhelming force. It was worse than anything she'd experienced before. The curse's inherent agony multiplied tenfold by whatever toxin had been introduced. Her vision went white with pain. She felt her body trying to reject it, trying to shut down rather than process something so fundamentally wrong. But she held on. Through gritted teeth, through tears streaming down her face, through the feeling that her very cells were being torn apart, Lyra absorbed. She pulled the poison out of Kael's system, channeled it through their bond, took it into herself where it couldn't kill him. The cost was immediate and brutal. Her legs gave out. Blood poured from her nose, her ears. She felt something inside her chest crack, not physically, but something deeper. The poison was attacking her gift, trying to destroy the very ability that made her valuable, just like the curse had tried during the binding ceremony. "Stop!" Maya's voice, distant and terrified. "You're killing yourself!" But Lyra couldn't stop. If she released now, the poison would flow back into Kael, finish what it had started. She had to pull it all out, had to accept every drop of toxin and curse-amplified agony. She felt her consciousness starting to fade, felt darkness creeping in at the edges of her vision. Then a hand gripped her shoulder, rough, strong, familiar. Astrid. "You're not doing this alone," the commander growled. "Maya, get the High Priestess, now. Thurin, secure Corvin before I decide to solve this problem with my blade. Everyone else, out." The room cleared rapidly. Through the haze of pain, Lyra felt Astrid's presence beside her, steady and solid. "Tell me what you need," Astrid commanded. "Can't. Stop pulling," Lyra gasped. "If I do, he dies." "Then we make sure you survive long enough to finish." Astrid's hand moved to Lyra's back, and suddenly there was pressure, not physical, but magical. The commander was channeling her own wolf strength through touch, supporting Lyra's failing body while she worked. It shouldn't have been possible. Wolves didn't share power with humans. But desperation made the impossible happen, and Astrid had proven repeatedly that loyalty mattered more to her than species prejudice. The High Priestess arrived in a swirl of robes, took one look at the situation, and began chanting. Power flooded the room. Ancient magic, binding magic, healing magic. The priestess was weaving a net around Lyra's gift, trying to protect it from the poison's corrosive effects. "The toxin is specifically designed to target curse bearers," the priestess announced grimly. "Whoever created this understood blood magic at a master level. It's trying to destroy both the curse and anything connected to it, including her bond with the Alpha King." "Can you stop it?" Astrid demanded. "I can slow it, but she's the only one who can actually extract it. If she fails, she won't fail." Astrid's grip tightened on Lyra's shoulder. "She's too stubborn to die from something as mundane as poison." The vote of confidence, delivered in Astrid's gruff tone, gave Lyra something to hold on to. She pulled harder, ignoring the way her body was shutting down, focusing entirely on the thread of poison curse flowing from Kael into her. She felt it finally, the last traces leaving his system. His convulsions stopped, his breathing steadied. Through the bond, she felt him swimming back toward consciousness. But the poison was still in her, concentrated now, all of it channeled into her human body that had no natural defenses against such toxicity. "Lyra, you need to release it," the High Priestess urged. "Expel it before it destroys you completely." "How?" Lyra's voice was barely a whisper. "It's tied to the curse. If I push it out, it goes back to him. Then we separate it." The priestess moved her hands in complex patterns, chanting in that ancient language. "Child, listen carefully. The poison is designed to amplify curse magic, but your gift transforms curse magic into something you can absorb. If you can convert the poison the same way, change its fundamental nature, it becomes harmless." "I don't know how—" "Yes, you do. You've been doing it every time you help him. You take something dark and destructive and make it bearable. Do that now. Transform the poison's nature. Make it yours instead of the curse's." Lyra closed her eyes, reaching for the roiling mass of toxin inside her chest. It fought her, tried to maintain its deadly purpose. But she'd been transforming curse energy for weeks now, learning the shape of dark magic, understanding how to reshape it. She grabbed hold of the poison's essence and pulled it through her gift, forcing it to change, to become something her body could process rather than something that would kill her. It resisted violently. Pain exploded through every nerve. She heard someone screaming and realized distantly it was her. Then Kael's voice, hoarse but strong. "Lyra, look at me." She forced her eyes open. Kael was sitting up, still pale but conscious, his amber eyes locked on hers with fierce intensity. "You saved me," he said. "Again. Now, let me save you. Through the bond, take my strength. All of it. Use it to burn out the poison. If I take too much, you'll—" "I don't care." He grabbed her hand and power flooded through their connection. Pure wolf strength, vast and overwhelming, pouring into her failing human body. Take it. Take everything. We survive together or not at all. Lyra accepted his strength and used it like a weapon, like fire burning away infection. She felt the poison begin to break down, its structure collapsing under the combined assault of her gift and Kael's power. The High Priestess's chanting intensified, her magic weaving protective barriers that contained the toxin's destruction, prevented it from lashing out in final vengeance, and slowly, agonizingly, the poison dissolved. When it was finally gone, Lyra collapsed into Kael's arms, both of them trembling with exhaustion. Around them, the council chamber was a disaster. Furniture overturned, the floor scorched from magical discharge, the walls bearing scorch marks from curse energy release. But they were alive. "Corvin," Kael said quietly, his voice carrying deadly promise. "Where is he?" "Secured in the dungeons," Theron reported, appearing in the doorway, along with 3 servants who had access to the wine cellars. "We're interrogating them now." "Good." Kael managed to stand, pulling Lyra up with him. "Assemble the full court. Immediately. Everyone attends, no exceptions. It's time we ended this permanently." An hour later, the Great Hall was packed. Every noble, every warrior, every person of significance in the Draven territories had been summoned. They filled the vast space, murmuring speculation, eyes fixed on the platform where Kael sat upon his obsidian throne. Lyra stood beside him, still shaky but upright. The High Priestess had healed the worst of the poison's damage, but Lyra could feel the toll it had taken. Her gift was battered, her bond with Kael stressed to breaking point. But she refused to show weakness, not now, not when everything hung in balance. Guards dragged Corvin onto the platform. The nobleman's fine clothes were dirty, his face bearing bruises from his arrest. But his eyes still held defiance. "The court is assembled," Kael announced, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. "We're here to address attempted regicide. Lord Corvin stands accused of poisoning the Alpha King with a toxin specifically designed to interact with curse magic. The evidence is substantial. Does anyone dispute these charges?" Silence. Even Corvin's former supporters remained quiet, unwilling to tie themselves to an assassination attempt. "Lord Corvin, do you deny the charges?" Kael asked. "I deny nothing," Corvin spat. "You're a cursed abomination who's weakened this kingdom by binding yourself to human trash. Someone had to act before you dragged us all into ruin." Gasps echoed through the hall. By admitting guilt openly, Corvin had sealed his fate. But he'd also revealed his absolute conviction that he was right. "You tried to kill me," Kael said, his tone almost conversational. "Not in honorable combat, but through poison. Coward's method." "Honor?" Corvin laughed bitterly. "There's no honor in fighting a cursed king. You're already dead, Kael. The curse will destroy you eventually. I was simply accelerating the inevitable while we still had time to choose a worthy successor. Successor like yourself, presumably. Someone had to lead. Someone uncursed, whole, capable of ruling without relying on a human girl's parlor tricks." "Those parlor tricks just saved the Alpha King's life," Astrid interjected coldly. "While you tried to end it, tell me, Corvin, in your grand vision of leadership, would you have possessed the strength to endure 5 years of curse torture without breaking? Would you have maintained kingdom stability while fighting a war inside your own body? Would you have survived tonight's poison? I wouldn't have been cursed in the first place, because you'd never have been strong enough to defeat your enemies," Kael finished. "My uncle cursed me because I killed him for his crimes. You lack the strength for such battles, which is precisely why you resorted to poison. You're weak, Corvin, not in body perhaps, but in character, in honor, in everything that actually matters." Kael stood, and the court fell silent, recognizing the moment of judgment. "The sentence for attempted regicide is death," he announced. "But I'm offering you a choice. Face execution, or face me in single combat. If you somehow manage to kill me in fair fight, the throne is yours and your crime is pardoned. If I kill you, justice is served. Choose." Corvin's face went pale. "You're still recovering from the poison. You can barely stand. This isn't a fair fight." "It's more fairness than you showed when you poisoned my wine," Kael interrupted. "Choose. Death by execution, or chance of victory in combat." The calculation in Corvin's eyes was visible. Kael was weakened, possibly still affected by poison and curse. Maybe, just maybe, Corvin could win. Combat, he decided. I'll take combat. Strip him of rank insignia, Kael commanded. Give him a weapon. Clear the floor. The court shifted rapidly, nobles and warriors moving to the perimeter, creating a large open space in the hall's center. Corvin was given a sword, plain but well-balanced. His rank insignia were removed, reducing him from lord to common challenger. Kael descended from the platform, his own sword already in hand. Lyra wanted to stop him, wanted to insist he was too weak for this, but she understood the necessity. The court needed to see their Alpha King defeat a traitor personally, needed to witness strength triumphing over treachery. Through the bond, she felt his exhaustion, felt the curse still burning in his system. But she also felt his determination, his cold fury, his absolute certainty that he would win. "Lyra," he called softly, "one more time. Help me." She approached quickly, placing her hands on his face, pulling as much curse energy as she could safely absorb. The familiar burn flowed into her, and she watched Kael's posture strengthen, watched color return to his face. "Enough," he murmured after a moment. "Save your strength. You've already given too much today." "Win quickly," she whispered back, "before the curse compensates." "Intended to." He kissed her forehead briefly, a gesture of affection that shocked the watching court, then turned to face Corvin. The fight began without ceremony. Corvin attacked first, a straightforward lunge designed to test Kael's reflexes. Kael sidestepped easily, his counter-strike forcing Corvin to retreat. They circled each other, trading blows that rang through the hall like bells. Corvin was skilled. Lyra had to admit that. His technique was textbook perfect, his strikes precise. Under normal circumstances, he would have been a formidable opponent. But Kael wasn't fighting under normal circumstances. He was fighting with 5 years of suppressed rage, with the fury of a king betrayed, with the desperate need to protect his mate from future threats. And he was winning. Each exchange ended with Corvin retreating. Each strike from Kael drove the nobleman backward. The curse tried to interfere. Lyra felt it flaring through the bond, attempting to weaken Kael at critical moments, but she pulled it immediately, absorbing just enough to keep him functional. They were a team now, working in perfect synchronization. When the curse attacked, she defended. When Kael needed strength, she provided it through their bond. The court watched in fascination as the cursed king and his human mate demonstrated partnership that transcended anything they'd believed possible. Corvin realized he was losing. Desperation entered his movements, making him sloppy. He lunged wildly, overextending, and Kael exploited the opening with brutal efficiency. His blade struck Corvin's sword arm, cutting deep. The nobleman's weapon clattered to the floor. "Yield," Kael commanded. "Never!" Corvin lunged barehanded, trying for a desperate grapple. Kael sidestepped and drove his blade through Corvin's chest in one clean thrust. The nobleman collapsed, blood spreading across the stone floor. His eyes were wide with shock, as if he couldn't quite believe this was how it ended. "You were right about one thing," Kael said quietly, withdrawing his sword. "The curse will probably destroy me eventually, but it won't be today, and it won't be because of cowards like you." Corvin tried to speak, but only blood emerged. He died there on the hall floor, eyes still open. His rebellion ended as pathetically as it had begun. Kael turned to face his court, sword still bloody. "Let this serve as warning to anyone else considering rebellion. I am cursed, yes. I am bonded to a human, yes, but I am still your Alpha King, still capable of defending my throne, and still willing to destroy anyone who threatens what I've built here." He paused, letting the message sink in. However, his tone shifted slightly. "Lord Corvin's accusations weren't entirely wrong. I have been weakened by the curse. I have relied on my mate's assistance to maintain functionality. These are facts, not shameful secrets. And I'm done pretending otherwise." He gestured for Lyra to join him. She walked across the floor, trying not to look at Corvin's body, and took her place at Kael's side. "From this day forward," Kael announced, "Lyra Vance is not merely my mate. She is my queen, with full authority to speak in my name, to make decisions regarding kingdom welfare, to act as regent during moments when the curse incapacitates me. She has proven her worth repeatedly, saving my life, defending my rule, demonstrating strength that puts most of you to shame. Anyone who questions her authority questions me directly." stunned silence. Then Theron stepped forward, dropping to one knee. "My queen," he said clearly, "you have my loyalty." Astrid followed, kneeling as well. "My queen, my sword is yours." One by one, the court knelt, some reluctantly, some eagerly, but all recognizing the new reality. The human bride had become their queen, elevated not through bloodline, but through proven capability. Lyra's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. These same wolves had mocked her, dismissed her, treated her as worthless. And now they knelt before her, acknowledging her value. "Rise," Kael commanded. "All of you. We have work to do." The rebellion has revealed weaknesses in our security, in our unity. Over the coming weeks, we'll address those weaknesses. We'll root out any remaining traitors. We'll rebuild stronger than before. He sheathed his sword, the sound final and absolute. "This court is dismissed. But remember what you witnessed today. Remember that strength comes in many forms, that partnerships can overcome curses, that loyalty matters more than species." His eyes swept the crowd. "And remember that your alpha king and queen will not tolerate future betrayals. We've been merciful once. We won't be merciful again." The court dispersed slowly, nobles and warriors filing out while shooting glances at Lyra that were now tinged with respect rather than contempt. The shift in dynamics was palpable, the entire power structure of the kingdom quietly reorganizing around the new truth. When they were finally alone, except for guards removing Corvin's body, Lyra felt her legs give out. Kael caught her immediately, supporting her weight. "Easy," he murmured. "You've earned rest." "We both have." Lyra leaned into him, feeling the curse beginning to reassert itself now that the immediate crisis had passed. "Your chambers?" "Our chambers," Kael corrected. "You're queen now. Officially. That means everything I have is yours." They made their way through corridors that felt different now. Servants who'd previously avoided Lyra now bowed respectfully. Guards who'd ignored her now saluted. The entire citadel was adjusting to the reality that the human girl was no longer disposable. In their chambers, Kael collapsed onto the bed with a groan of exhaustion. Lyra joined him, immediately placing her hands on his chest to begin the familiar process of absorbing curse pain. "You know," Kael said after several minutes of comfortable silence, "when your father sent you here, I expected to tolerate you at best, endure the political arrangement, maintain distance, treat you as a necessary inconvenience. I remember. You made that quite clear during our first meeting. I was an idiot." He caught her hands, brought them to his lips. "You're the best thing that's happened to this cursed kingdom in decades, possibly ever." Careful. That almost sounded like affection. It was affection, also gratitude, also, He paused, amber eyes serious. "Love. I love you, Lyra Vance. My impossible, courageous, stubbornly loyal queen." Lyra's breath caught. She'd known they cared for each other, had felt the bond growing deeper than mere political arrangement, but hearing him say it aloud, claim it openly, was different. "I love you too," she whispered. "My cursed, complicated, insufferable king." They lay together as night fell over Ravenscar Citadel. Two people who'd been thrown together by politics and desperation but had somehow forged something real. The curse still existed. Lyra could feel it pulsing through the bond, patient and eternal. But it no longer felt insurmountable. Together, they were stronger than any curse, any rebellion, any threat. Over the following weeks, the kingdom transformed. Lyra established herself as a force to be reckoned with, implementing reforms that addressed the court's dysfunction. She created a council position for non-shifters, humans and those unable to transform, giving voice to populations previously ignored. She reorganized the Citadel's defenses, working with Astrid to eliminate security weaknesses. Most importantly, she began researching the curse in earnest. If it couldn't be broken, perhaps it could be managed more effectively. She consulted with the High Priestess, studied ancient texts, even reached out to scholars in the southern kingdoms, carefully, through neutral intermediaries. The curse remained, but its hold weakened, whether through Lyra's constant absorption, through the bond's distribution of its power, or simply through time. It became less all-consuming. Kael still suffered, but suffering no longer defined him. And the kingdom prospered. Trade agreements were renegotiated from positions of strength. Border disputes were settled decisively. The wolf clans, seeing their alpha king supported by a competent queen, rallied more strongly than ever before. 6 months after the binding ceremony, Lyra stood on the citadel's highest tower, watching the sun set over the Draven territories. The landscape was harsh and beautiful, unforgiving and magnificent, much like the kingdom itself. Footsteps behind her, Kael's arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her back against his chest.
"What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How far we've come. How close we came to losing everything. But we didn't lose. We won." "We survived," Lyra corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Kael rested his chin on top of her head. "Survival is victory when the odds are impossible. And ours were definitely impossible. Cursed king, human bride, hostile court. Yet here we are, alive, together, stronger." He was right.
They'd taken impossible circumstances and transformed them into triumph. Not because they were naturally suited for each other, not because fate had destined their union, but because they'd chosen to fight, chosen to trust, chosen partnership over pride. "The southern kingdoms are requesting a formal visit," Lyra mentioned. "My father wants to see how his disposable daughter is faring." "Let him come. Let him see what his worthless child has become." Kael's voice carried satisfaction. "Let him witness the queen who saved a cursed kingdom and made it thrive. You know he'll try to take credit, claim he planned this outcome all along. Let him try. We know the truth. The truth was simple and profound. Strength came in many forms. Compassion was power. Love could conquer curses. And sometimes the most unlikely partnerships created the strongest foundations." Below them, the citadel bustled with evening activity. Wolves in human and shifted forms moved through courtyards, training grounds, market squares. A kingdom that had once viewed humans as prey now followed a human queen without question. "I never thanked you properly," Kael said quietly, "for that first night when you touched me and felt the curse. You could have run, should have run, but you stayed." "Where would I have gone?" Lyra turned in his arms to face him. "Back to a kingdom that viewed me as worthless? Forward into a court that wanted me dead? The only path that made sense was toward you. Still, you chose compassion when survival dictated self-preservation. That's rare. Precious. So are you." Lyra reached up to touch his face, feeling the curse's familiar pulse beneath his skin. It was part of him now, woven so deeply into his being that removing it might destroy him. But that was acceptable. They'd learned to live with it, to transform its weakness into unexpected strength. The curse had brought them together, had forced Kael to rely on someone else, to admit vulnerability, to accept help, had given Lyra purpose, value, a reason to fight. In a twisted way, the curse had saved them both. As stars began appearing in the darkening sky, Lyra allowed herself a moment of pure contentment. She was queen of a wolf kingdom, bonded to a cursed king, surrounded by former enemies who'd become grudging allies. Her life was dangerous and complicated and nothing like what she'd imagined during her sheltered childhood. It was perfect. "Come on," Kael said eventually, tugging her toward the stairs. "The council meeting starts in an hour, and Theron will lecture us about punctuality if we're late again." "Let him lecture. We're the king and queen. We set the schedule." "True. But Astrid sharpens her weapons very pointedly when we keep her waiting, and that's genuinely unsettling." Lyra laughed, a sound of genuine joy that echoed across the tower. Together, they descended into the citadel, ready to face whatever challenges awaited. Because they would face them together. Always together. The unwanted bride and the cursed king, who'd proven that even in the harshest lands, even against impossible odds, courage and connection could rewrite any fate. Their story wasn't the fairy tale Lyra had dreamed about as a child. No magical rescue, no effortless happy ending. But it was real and hard-won and infinitely more valuable because of the battles they'd fought to claim it. And in the Draven territories under the cold northern stars, that was more than enough. It was everything.